Tim Pool has multiple channels. Timcast IRL is like the real channel.
RASCNSHURIKEN to all transphobia around the world.
Someone needs to teach text-to-speech anime lingo. Lauren, it's a lesser-known Lauren, but maybe the most vile one. Yeah, Lauren Witzke. You know, the Nazi who told Blair White to her face that she just needed to grow out her mustache. She went on Tim Pool's show. But yeah, so Tim Pool has a lesser known channel that's just Tim Pool. So I guess we'll watch this one. Oh my god, what? Speaking of Lauren Southern, by the way, this is the opening of Timcast Media presents a Lauren Southern film, Infringed, Gun Rights in America. What the fuck is this? I'm sorry. Timcast.com. Lauren Southern. I need to know. I just need to know. Oh my god, there's so many pop-ups on this fucking website. This is my personal hell. Nah. I refuse to go back to timcast.com. Is she going on a mass shooting? Honestly, you never know with these folks. I do propose that we watch this in its entirety, though. Oh yeah, I want to see presidential candidate Cenk Uygur.
Welcome to the Culture War, everybody. This one's gonna be fun. We're hanging out with Cenk Uygur.
Hey Tim, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm kind of awesome.
Yeah. How's life? How's it going?
No big deal. Nothing interesting happening. Just running for president, running a company, hosting a show. Not busy at all.
When will you divest from your company, sir?
I really appreciate you coming down. You know, because we sent out a bunch of invites all over the place. We rarely get liberals and people from the left. They make up maybe like 5 to 10% of the people who come out. So, but actually, for this show, we've been doing the Culture War Fridays. Way more interest from more all across the spectrum. People wanting to come in. I guess it's because it's not as topical news, right? It's just we can talk about whatever.
Yeah, no, I come bearing revolution. And so there's a reason why I came.
I like it, says Tim Pool, notable fence sitter, someone who has literally described fence sitting as one of his most positive attributes.
But
are you sorry, I just noticed the prop in the background. He has a literal truth bomb on his fucking set. Conservatives, man, they do not have any imagination whatsoever. Hey, I don't know how to pronounce Arabic names. I apologize. I don't read Arabic, but welcome in YouTube chat, and thank you very much for the compliments. I appreciate it. Hey, IP a lot.
But what you're pointing out is actually important, and I think it's actually been harmful to the left that we have not engaged as much. And so I think, like, for example, we'll get into it probably later as to like our differences, and there's plenty of differences for sure. And then I think that I would cue the audience to look out though for the similarities, because there's so much that we disagree on, but there's also a ton that we agree on. And what I mean, like, I don't mean necessarily me and you, but we'll find out but I bet we do, right?
I think we agree more than we disagree.
Yeah, and I think that the American people agree a lot more than they realize. and partly because the media is driving division. And so, but one of the things we'll probably get into is audience capture,
Yeah.
and then a new thing that happened, in my opinion, which is guest capture, and that's kind of our fault, meaning the left's fault, because I think Joe Rogan got guest captured. I think Bill Maher did to some degree, maybe you did. I don't know. We'll talk about it, but that's because they have nonstop.
Didn't Cenk mess up his Nevada caucus paperwork? Honestly, it doesn't matter. Honestly, it genuinely doesn't matter that if he messes up all of his paperwork.
Right wingers on, in my opinion. But at the same time, the left doesn't love to go on shows and that are right wing and platforming and all that BS. So
this is just, in my experience, this just isn't true, right? Like, I feel like a lot of lefties in the media space, particularly in like YouTube media or like streaming media, would jump at the chance to go on conservative media shows.
Can I curse on this show?
It's up to you. I guess we try not to. I know we try to be family friendly. But,
okay, all right.
whatever.
God bless. Okay.
Yeah, what it is. I think you're right. To varying degrees, some are more resistant to capture than others, to their own detriment. And but this has been something we've talked about. And I agree on the Joe Rogan thing too. People are getting they get attacked for going on Rogan. They get, I don't go on. He's far right. Why are you doing it? I mean, there are even people who are saying it's a bad idea to have you on the show, but that's the most laughable thing in the world because
Tim Pool suddenly so magnanimous about inviting people onto his show. Hey Tim, why don't you invite Sam Cedar onto your show? Why don't you invite Sam Cedar? I hear you're a big fan.
We try to get as many people as possible across the spectrum, and the strange thing about it is when people will say that like Timcast IRL is far right or whatever.
Yeah, I do know that I think Dean, what is his name? Minnesota running for president. I don't remember his name. Dean Phillips is running for president. I was going to talk about this, totally forgot. Here. Do we get a video? Yeah, okay. Fine, we'll watch the ad. I'm not turning on the audio, though. I want to become a debate bro. Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, becoming good at debate is really, really helpful in these spaces, because then you can learn how to form a rhetorical point. An effective rhetorical point, One day... If we have to sit through another ad... Okay.
Found that large numbers of Democratic voters want to see someone challenge President Joe Biden for the party's nomination in 2024. Well, now Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips is giving people...
Oh shit, chat. We're in the Dean-verse. We're in the Dean-verse now.
People their wish. He's telling our Robert Costa that he is indeed getting into the presidential race in a TV exclusive. Bob, good morning. Why is he doing it?
Good morning, Tony. Well, Congressman Phillips said his decision was driven by his fear that President Biden could lose to former President Donald Trump, and he's also asking other Democrats to consider getting in the race.
Are you running for president?
I am. I have to.
Congressman Dean Phillips, a Minnesota Democrat, is launching a bid for the White House. Even he...
Which, by the way, to be fair to him, Minnesota Democrats tend to be the best kind of Democrats.
He calls a long shot, taking on an incumbent president he still praises.
I think President Biden has done a spectacular job for our country, but it's not about the past. This is an election about the future.
Phillips, a 54-year-old former business executive, believes President Biden is on pace to lose to former President Donald Trump and needs to be challenged for the Democratic nomination.
I will not sit still. I will not be quiet in the face of numbers that are so clearly saying that we're going to be facing an emergency next November.
Recent CBS News polling shows a Biden-Trump rematch would be a jump ball politically.
Yeah, I don't really want that.
Only a third of voters are sure Biden would finish a second term. Biden maintains
Jesus
he is fit to
Christ.
serve.
Are you with me in this fight?
Do you believe President Biden's age is a factor in your decision to run?
I think it's time for a new generation. I think it's time to pass the torch. And I say now. I think the time is now, because I think 4 years from now, it might be too late.
Phillips is the first sitting lawmaker to take on Biden, joining Marianne Williamson running against the president in the Democratic race. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West,
Oh, they didn't even mention Cenk Uygur. Oh no. Oh.
who have followings on the left, are running as independents.
I'm a proud Democrat, and if I'm not the nominee, I will give it my all, just as much as I intend to give my own campaign to whoever that nominee is.
We met Phillips, an heir to the Phillips liquor fortune, who helped later expand Talenti Gelato at a home he owns in Virginia.
They say in Washington, if you want a good friend, you get a good dog. And I got two.
In Congress, he has cast
Oh,
himself
they're really
as a
cute
centrist
dogs.
suburban Democrat.
We should work together, Democrats and Republicans.
And while he is the latest Democrat to join the presidential race, he hopes he's not the last.
Do you believe that your candidacy could soften the ground for others to get in?
I hope it does. I know it's rare for somebody entering this arena to actually invite competition, but we need it.
Today, Phillips
I wonder if Cenk is going to take credit for Dean Dean Phillips running.
will be in New Hampshire to officially file to be on the ballot there. He will then kick off a bus tour, but he does face enormous hurdles logistically and politically in the weeks ahead, including making the ballot in other states and skepticism from many Democrats. Back to you all.
Bob, he showed us that he's got at least 2 friends. I'm sure he has more than
Oh.
that. Does he have a campaign staff? Does he have a following?
That was absolutely savage. He showed us he has at least 2 friends. Oh my god.
It's going to be an uphill climb for him. He hopes because President Biden has decided not to be on the ballot in New Hampshire, he'll have a chance to get some traction there. But as they say, and he said in this interview, if you need a friend in Washington, stick with the dog.
Yeah. They do give you unconditional love.
But when the family's in the liquor and ice cream business, you got more than 2 friends. You got a lot of friends.
You're right about that. All right, Bob, thank you so much.
Oh god. Yeah. That was a fun little segue. I enjoyed that. Yeah, his best friend is dog number 1 and then dog number 2, the bounty hunter.
Or my favorite was when Hassan called Ian Crossland a conservative. All right, do you know who Ian is? I mean, he's a hippy-dippy crystal weirdo who doesn't like Donald Trump. And
Good for him.
Well, we don't really know how to describe Ian other than he's just like a wild card kind of guy.
I mean, the best way to describe Ian is Moonlord. Because Moonlord is capricious and manipulates the tides in unknown ways. He's mysterious, and some days he's out, and other days he's shining bright. Who knows? Who can say with Moonlord? Whose main superpower seems to be having absolutely no political foundation whatsoever, so he just believes whatever shit he believes. Because he has no consistent moral underpinning.
Who doesn't follow the news in the same way as everybody in the culture war.
Nah, guys, there's no saving Moonlord, okay? He went on like a vast anti-Semitic rant, okay? Damn it, when I search Moonlord on YouTube to try and find that clip, all that comes up is Terraria. Thanks, gamers.
And so he's often pushing back on us in very strange ways, such as he said Palestine should be the 51st state of the United States, which is a strong departure from anyone in politics. But then he'll get called conservative just by...
I mean, he does make you look good, Tim, by comparison, because he'll just say crazy shit.
virtue of being on the show with us.
Okay, well, let's get into it because I get it. but I've kind of changed my mind on something there, and that's partly why I say come bearing revolution.
All right.
Because look, the thing that really set me off, and I thought that you were in that group, but I'm now beginning to change my mind a little bit.
Oh
on
my
it,
God, what?
is that this is a old tried and true tactic of the right wing, is that they get people who used to be left wing, and then they turn them into turncoats. They pay them a lot of money.
You come on his show and immediately start sucking his dick. That's insane to me, dude. I've started changing my mind about you. You're actually very genuine. What the fuck you talking about, bro?
And then they trot them out there like in hostage videos, and then Tulsi Gabbard and Tulsi Gabbard will come and go, I am a left winger, but the right wing is right about everything. The right wing is right. The right wing is right. And then they love it. And they just all like this orgiastic reaction of like, oh, even the left wingers agree with us. We're so right. And it's like a trick that works every time with the right wing audience. And it's super frustrating.
They do it with former conservatives and Joe Biden.
Well, no, that's a little different. I hear what you're saying. The reason why I say it's a little different is because the former conservatives are almost all corporatists.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party is also corporatist.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're, changing their actual ideology. Right.
Yep. They're pro-war. They're pro-corporate. They're pro-establishment power, pro-revolving door politics. And
pro-pharma, pro-big oil, pro everything that's donors, multinational corporations, etc. Right. So whereas like Tulsi is a liar, like she was, yeah, of course she was. First of all, to be fair to her, in a deeply ironic way, she was always a secret right winger, but she was lying that she was a progressive. And so the first person to suss that out was Anna, and Anna did
You've gone from saying like some people are secret right. You've gone from saying like, oh, I thought conservatives were buying media figures and turning them right wing, and I used to think that about you, but I don't anymore. Anyway, here's my conspiracy theory about secret right wingers that are in no way fall into the category I just said you don't fall into. What is this?
bunch of stories about how Tulsi was a right winger back when she was pretending to be progressive and running for president in 2020. And people,
what is that? Is that like the gay marriage stuff or something?
That stuff. She's always hated Muslims. Like there's like, oh, she's like, I'm all for peace. Unless it's Muslims, then let's bomb them. Drone strikes and troops and go get the goddamn Muslim. I mean, they just all happen to be Muslim countries, and I just happen to be a Hindu nationalist. But it's just random.
Didn't she go to Syria? She was trying to.
Yeah, she went to Syria, met with Bashar al-Assad. Nah, I don't know what she's doing, but she's not a progressive. So her going out there and pretending to be a progressive and doing right-wing propaganda gets under every skin I have. Okay, so but now that gig is up, right? Or that jig is up. Like her, Glenn Greenwald, a couple of others. I don't want to start the drama, right? But like,
you think even Glenn is?
Oh yeah,
a liar.
Yeah. So look, here's the thing. Again, to be fair to both Tulsi and Glenn, they had right-wing tendencies throughout, and Glenn used to do it in a principled way.
This seems like a conversation someone who wants to be president should be having. This will certainly help his run.
I remember we had a debate on Young Turks between Glenn Greenwald and Larry Lessig, who's like a legendary campaign finance reform professor and leader and godfather of the movement. It was right after Citizens United, and because we've been around forever. And Lessig was saying that Citizens United was decided wrong, and Glenn was arguing that it was decided right. So Glenn was in favor of money in politics. Now, he'll probably say some BS about, well, no, I'm not in favor of money in politics. I just think that politics should drown in it, and that it's like free speech, that it's awesome that all these companies bribe all of our politicians. But hey, free speech. So whatever that was, but back then, I mean, like that was out of actual principle, whatever, principle he thinks he has. So there was like a little right-wing tinge to him even back then. But now it's so over the top. Everything is, Tucker Carlson is so right. I'm a liberal, and I think Tucker Carlson is the most right person in the world. Like, Glenn, like, we don't see it. Come on, brother.
Let's define left and right. How would you describe
Okay.
it?
So, but that's where we're getting into now the new world. Okay. So that frustrated me about Rogan and Maher and you as well. Like, I thought, here we go again, pretending to be left wing and then saying things that are all right wing and going, see, the right wing's right about everything, right? But I now think a little bit differently about you three. Okay. I think Tulsi and Glenn are still just playing a scam, total utter scam. Okay. But and it's Dave Rubin is a classic example of that scam. You know, he also had like right wing tendencies a little bit.
I'll keep that quote in mind for a good long time now, going forward. Ashley, get good sleep. Thanks for sticking around and hanging out with us, and thank you for helping to invent the internet.
Like, loves anything that's brutal on the Israeli side. He's like, occupation is great, bombing the hell out of the Palestinians is awesome. So he always believed that, even when he was pretending to be a liberal. So, but for like Dave, there's nothing left about him. Nothing. And no one thinks that Dave Rubin is left anymore. And as long as you don't think he's a left winger and you're not running that scam and you just say, okay, you're a right winger, then I have no problems. Then let's debate. It's no big deal, right?
I think even he calls himself conservative now.
Yeah. He gave up that
but what is left and right in your view?
Yeah, so I'm going to get to that through the answer of you, Rogan and Maher, that new group, okay? So Maher's not a right-winger. Like, I get it, right? But he have right-wing views? Yeah, he does, right? So he's terrible on Israel and on Muslims, etc. He's in the Sam Harris group, and there's a bunch of other things he's terrible on. But he's right about a lot of other things, right? He's right about Biden. He's right about at least half the topics. And Rogan is genuine. Like, as much as like I get frustrated by Rogan and I think there was audience capture and guest capture and all of that, he genuinely means it. And part of the reason is he was already rich. He didn't need to do Dave Rubin like scams to get rich, right? So he's just has his own opinions. He's sharing them. They're leaning more right wing. But as long as it's genuine, I got no problem with it, right?
The more the left refuses to come on, the more you get conservative, right, libertarian, or post-liberal, whatever you want to call it, and then the more your views are going to be shaped by those that are surrounding you. You know, you are the summation of the 5 people that surround you.
100% right, Tim. So, like, I say this at the very beginning of my book, we have hardware and software, right, in our heads. So our hardware is our DNA and what we're predisposed to. So maybe later we can get into my hardware, which is complicated because I'm generally very progressive in my nature. But there are parts of me that are conservative, that like, I don't like change. I like staying in the same house. I like driving on the same road, et cetera, et cetera. So the hardware is a little complicated, but the software is the interesting part. Software is where you get all of your ideas from. And where do you get them from? You get them from family, friends, media.
I have to be completely honest with you guys. This feels very incoherent to me. Am I alone? Am I just like, I get the gist of what he's saying, but it's in the most incomprehensible way possible.
Media, your surroundings, etc. The bubble that you're in. And we're all in a bubble. And I try to get the left to understand, brothers and sisters, the right wing's not the only people in the bubble. Like, we think MAGA's nuts, right? We think like the election being stolen is the craziest thing that anybody's ever thought. And I believe that 100%. Okay. So they're in their bubble in our opinion. But we have our own bubble, right? And so, and our own bubble has some things that aren't true in it either. And I can give you some prominent examples in a minute. But now the new thing that's happening, getting to the core of your original question.
Is it going to be trans shit?
Now I sense a disturbance in the force. And before, everything was left wing or right wing, and it isn't that anymore. Especially in the last 6 months or so, I have started to see hosts who are no longer easy to define, okay, that have opinions that are in different parts of the spectrum. And then the best part of it is I started to see the audience in left-wing audiences, right-wing audiences, middle audiences starting to have opinions all over the political spectrum. And that's actually a beautiful thing. And the reason that that's great is because these preset ideologies, just believing in them is irrational. Like, so what? We're supposed to be either left wing or right wing, and that comes with like 80 different policy points on each side. And somehow magically, we're supposed to agree with all 80 on the right wing side or all 80 on the left wing side. And that's not how humanity works, right?
He's trying to say that in like the last 6 months, like content creators and media figures stopped being left or right, and people in their audiences started having like multiple multiple different opinions that don't correlate with their media bubbles. But like, that doesn't feel true to me. And he's clearly operating off of feelings, not data here. Because if he was operating off of data, he would have it.
We wind up in different parts of the spectrum for different issues.
So I've noticed this too, because we've had guests on that I would probably describe as tribalist left, and they hold default positions you expect to hear on Twitter, on X, or whatever, or in the news. And then we'll have people like Destiny on, and Destiny will give a well thought out, reasonable response addressing the points that were made and have a real conversation about where his positions are. The fascinating.
I feel like Tim purposely pushed that button because I think didn't Destiny go on like TYT recently? Didn't that happen? Maybe I'm misremembering.
Fascinating thing. I'm a big fan of Destiny. He's great, and he'll passionately say Trump sucks. Like, here's the problems with Trump, and then we'll have other conversations about culture war issues, and he's like, oh yeah, that's totally true and correct, right? When he said,
like, am I misremembering that? Am I inhaling the gas leak?
He got in trouble on Twitch for this. Kyle Rittenhouse was the clearest cut case of self-defense he had ever seen.
Yeah.
And so, that's taboo in the tribal aspect of it. But, I see.
Did Cenk just like nod along with that? Because I'm sorry, I need to confirm that.
Said he got in trouble on culture war issues, and he's like, oh yeah, that's totally true and correct, right? When he said he got in trouble on Twitch for this. Kyle Rittenhouse was the clearest cut case of self-defense he had ever seen. Yeah. And so, that's taboo.
I know for a fact that I saw Cenk Uygur months after the conviction, or not the conviction, the opposite. Being found innocent. For months afterward, calling Kyle Rittenhouse a murderer. It's actually insane to me to see that. The acquittal. Thank you.
In the tribal aspect of it, but I see Destiny as someone. He's just a guy who sees things and forms a moral framework around news, facts, and information. We might disagree on some things, but that's totally fine.
Yeah, I think Destiny is a great example of it.
Hey, very nice.
I was on his show too, and then, even though he's to the right of me on a lot of cultural issues, so this is where the spectrum bends. It doesn't even make any sense.
Right.
But people in DC would say he's to the left of me on Democratic Party issues. Like, even though I'm running for president on the Democratic side, cenkforamerica.com, but I think Democratic leadership is awful, and Destiny is like such an interesting character and a bit of an avatar for the new paradigm, because he will not agree with the orthodoxy of some of the left, but then he loves Biden, and I think it's hilarious. Like he's genuine about it, so I don't mind at all.
Yeah,
right.
Remember when they said that Kamala Harris was to the left of Bernie Sanders?
Yeah. And then, by the way, then Trump said that she was a Marxist and a communist.
Right.
Well, let's make up our minds.
What they were really saying was that she does not compromise with Republicans. So her voting record is almost more aligned with
This
Democrat
stream
Party
just got
politics, whereas Bernie.
Sexier. Because I am here. BWA.
Very nice, Doc. Thank you for the $5 dono. BWA indeed. Thank you for bringing us all up a little bit. in terms of sexiness.
Sanders was willing to compromise with anybody to get a bill through, which shows, in my opinion, more reasonable behavior. But then the media narrative is because she's voted without Republicans, she's more left, which is like literally makes no sense.
No, that's a great point because they actually do that to progressives all the time. That's mainstream media trick 101. Bernie Sanders is not a real Democrat. Well, but wait a minute. What does a real Democrat mean? The Democrats used to be the party of FDR, and so it meant Social Security and LBJ, Medicare and civil rights and voting rights and all these progressive policy positions, war on poverty, etc. And Bernie Sanders represents that infinitely better than Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. But the Democratic Party's become corrupted now. And so they vote for things that are not left-wing at all, that are just corporatist. And then the media comes in, which is corporate media, and they go, the corporate positions are the Democratic positions. These FDR positions are terrible right-wing positions. You're like, no, you're making up things that are weird and ridiculous, and that's partly why mainstream media lost all credibility. Claiming that Kamala Harris is further left than Bernie Sanders, you'd have to be in an institution to believe that. But that is how but they're tricky. They're liars. So they don't say Kamala Harris is more left-wing than Bernie Sanders. They say Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat.
Yeah,
and it cues the Democratic voters to think he's a Republican because he's not a Democrat, when in reality he's further left than the Democrats. The media knows that trick, but they go, technically, I didn't say he wasn't left-wing. I said he wasn't a Democrat. Technically, he's not.
Well, I think Trump and Bernie caused this fracture in 2015 into 16. Bernie was too far left, and they could not let him gain popularity in the party. They could not let him win the nomination. It was a meteoric rise. Donald Trump was called by Vox.com a moderate Republican, and he was actually taking more moderate, even right-leaning Democrat positions to try and generate mass appeal, resulting in the Democrats having to oppose whatever it is Trump was suggesting, and then creating this weird amalgam of neocons and neoliberals taking corporate establishment positions, which was then the left.
Yeah.
So, you got to... We try to have that... I have this debate very often with people on the right when they say leftists hate guns. And I'm like, no, the left they like guns. Liberals want gun control. There's a distinction there. But the media will only give you one narrative, and they try to lump everyone into the same categories.
Yeah, so the phenomenon you described about Trump and opposing Trump is, I think, 95% right. And it really saddens me, sickens me that the Democratic Party has been taken over by neoliberals and neocons.
Hey,
and
Karina.
just look at MSNBC. It's wall-to-wall.
Kyrie, the charity stream is done. I think the donation link is also done so no need to share that one around. But I appreciate your vim and vigor.
Republicans
and intelligence officials
and generals and former Republican congressmen. I mean, Nicole Wallace is celebrated, like in D.C. She's the belle of the ball. Nicole Wallace, Trump resistor extraordinaire. Her job was very literally to be the mouthpiece for George W. Bush and Dick Cheney as they were starting the most disastrous wars in U.S. history.
How does George W. Bush? How has he recovered his favorability among Democrat voters? You've seen the polls, right?
Yeah. And that's what drives me crazy. So Liz Cheney opposes Trump. I think it's courageous, and I appreciate her for it. But I disagree with everything else that she says and does. You don't have to lose your mind and be like, Liz Cheney's now a good guy, and I love Liz Cheney. No. If you give her an opportunity, she'd start the next war in about half a second.
What he's saying here is true. Just because someone has some opinions that you like doesn't mean that they are an angel, and just because someone has some opinions you dislike doesn't mean they are the devil incarnate. You know? That's true. And a lot of people struggle with breaking out of kind of this black and white thinking when it comes to politics in particular. And that does make things very difficult. Ideological purity is in short supply in politics.
And then then Nancy Pelosi hugging Dick Cheney. No, Dick Cheney is prime evil. So you don't hug Darth Vader because he's against some other Sith Lord.
Well, let's talk about you running for president.
Yeah.
Can you be president? The argument being that you were not born in the United States. Your parents were not American citizens when you were born.
No, they weren't actually. I saw you said that. I appreciate that you were looking for.
Yeah, I saw that,
You
Karina.
were almost looking out for me.
I thought Emma Vigeland did such a good job on Tim Pool's show.
No, I'm just.
I just want to know.
Yeah.
A lot of people on Twitter were saying that you're. The first thing that happened was we talked about your campaign. The first thing I said was if it was between like Mitt Romney and Joe Biden, I'm voting for you.
Yeah.
And
damn right, CenkForAmerica.com.
But it's because I even donated to Nancy Pelosi's progressive primary rival because I think, yeah, she's prime evil. I would rather have an idealistic young person who's wrong than evil corporate Nancy Pelosi enriching herself through government and squeezing the vestiges of power until she dies. It's horrifying. But when this came up, Phil Labonte immediately was like, Cenk's not a naturalized citizen. He can't be president. And I was like, oh, okay, well, then what are we talking about? So explain, good sir.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm mainly in the race to make sure that Biden drops out. So I want to talk about that a lot.
We like that.
Yeah, he's at 37%. You shouldn't like that.
Biden isn't going to... this is the thing. Biden isn't going to drop out. That just isn't happening. Biden could be defeated in the primary, but like the clock is really ticking on that one. And like Dean Phillips, I don't think is going to be the guy that does that. But we'll see. And like Biden isn't going to drop out, and also Biden is very, very, very likely not to be defeated in the primary. So again, like the mental math here is just insane to me.
Yeah, you should be opposed to me because the Republicans and the right wing should want Biden in this race. He's the weakest possible candidate for the Democrats. He's sitting at 37% in the polling. He's down 10 points in independents, down in 5 out of 7 swing states. I have him at over 90% likelihood of losing. So if you're a right winger, you should turn around now and be like, yeah, let's go Joe Biden. Okay, whatever the opposite of let's go Brandon is. Because that brother's going to lose. There's almost no chance he wins.
I agree.
And he doesn't know how to campaign. He doesn't know how to fight for his voters. Like Mike Johnson gets elected Speaker of the House, right? I think he's extreme MAGA.
Okay, wait a minute.
In 1,000 different ways we
can wait a minute. Yeah, if you list his approval rating overall, yeah, it's 37%. But he has 75% of the support of the Democratic Party support. Yeah. And the reason it's slipping right now is because of his abysmal performance when it comes to the human rights of Palestinians. Like that. Okay. Yeah, no, this makes more sense. Yeah, the reason it's so skewed is because his approval rating amongst Republicans is 5%. God.
Get into it later. And then when the press secretary is asked about it by Peter Alexander at NBC, they get into Biden mode where they're like, well, that was in the past and we're looking forward to the future and we're looking forward to working with him. Why are you defending Mike Johnson, who's the leader of the other party? You're supposed to fight for us. You're not supposed to...
But by the way, again, Biden's not campaigning yet. Not really. Like, when Biden starts making moves to campaign, you guys will know about it. And also, like, he's gonna start pulling, like, the emergency levers. You know, like meaningful, like, I in my opinion, okay, I could be wrong, but my opinion is that he's gonna start pulling, like, the emergency, break glass in case of emergency stuff. He's gonna pursue, like, student loan forgiveness. He's gonna, like, do some of the things that people are actually excited for him to do that will meaningfully impact everyday life. You know, that's what I think anyway. And that's going to boost him in the polls. It really will. But right now, we are a year out from election day, and like polling right now isn't very substantial for what it's going to be a year from now. Isn't politics fun? Kind of.
To go around being like, and Biden says it in nearly every speech. Oh, my Republican friends, I love Republicans so much. I work so well with Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. We've been ripping off the American people on behalf of corporate donors for decades. Wait, did I say that last part out loud? No. Okay, he didn't say the last part out loud. But even if you don't think that, even if you're the most hardcore Biden dude in the world, which congratulations, there's 3 of you. Okay, there's like no enthusiasm. I can get into that too. It's not going to change the fact that the country's not into him. Like,
what do you think about what Matt Gaetz did with McCarthy?
So that's another one that's long and complex.
Not Jess. I think the difference is a lot more stark. I think Trump would unironically be pushing to nuke the Gaza Strip. Like, we know from like leaked meetings that he was pushing to nuke North Korea. It was only because his senior military advisors stopped him. Like, we know that he's like itching to like do horrific shit all the time. I think it would be so much worse. He'd put boots on the ground in like Israel. He'd like start a war with Iran.
Complicated, because I thought that there were good parts of that, and then of course disastrous parts of it, right?
I love it.
Yeah, but let me answer your question about the native-born issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not a native-born citizen. I'm a naturalized citizen. Okay, and so everybody then goes, well, duh, can't you read, man? It's in the Constitution. It says right there you have to be native-born. Yeah, that's in the original Constitution, and right next to it is the clause that says that black people are 3/5 of a person. Well, can't you read, man? It's in the Constitution. It's right there, man. Yeah, but there's a thing called amendments that amend the Constitution. So that part...
Yeah, but none of what you are describing has been established in a court of law, which is undeniably where it would go.
Got amended out, the 3/5 part, obviously. Tons of the Constitution got amended out. And the natural-born citizen thing was amended out by the 14th Amendment. So the 14th Amendment says very, very clearly, anyone who is born or naturalized has due process and equal protection of the laws. So the Supreme Court has ruled that due process and equal protection means you have the same exact rights, and they didn't put naturalized in there by accident. They put it in on purpose.
Well, so Cenk is saying that the amendment already affects his eligibility. Not that he would have to pass a new one. But what his argument here is untested in a court of law. So it would definitely go before the Supreme Court.
Very clearly amends the earlier part of the Constitution where naturalized citizens did not have equal rights. Now we do have equal rights. I mean, that's, again, the whole point of the 14th Amendment was to take out the discrimination in the earlier part of the Constitution. And they didn't say like, oh, born and naturalized have equal protection of the laws.
Sorry, that's the...
except for those goddamn naturalized citizens, they're not allowed to be president. If they wanted to say that, they could have said that, but there is no asterisks. They didn't say that. They said, no, naturalized citizens have all the same rights.
Some people brought up that there was already a recent Supreme Court ruling which basically ruled the other direction.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is not how it's going to work.
So there's mixed rulings, no question. So there's, in Schneider v. Russ, they say that naturalized citizens and natural-born Americans have the same exact rights. It would be, wildly unconstitutional to treat naturalized citizens as quote-unquote second-class citizens, okay? Now, in Schneider, they mention the presidential clause, but they don't comment on it. They don't say yes or no to it. They just note it and move on, okay? And then there are decisions with this guy, Hassan,
this guy, Hassanabi?
He's a good guy, good intentions. I imagine, I don't know him personally, but kind of did this amateur litigation, and the courts then didn't really get a chance to fully consider it. He came in with a really weak case, and so he got some rulings against him. But that is not at all definitive. And when you get into court decisions, even though the 14th Amendment is crystal clear, lawyers get in there and they're like, well, did they mean born or naturalized, even though they said born or naturalized? And then they mean equal, even though they said equal. Well, how about this case where even though it says equal, it doesn't mean equal?
You are describing constitutional law right now. Okay, you are literally describing what they do all day, every day.
Well, yeah, we can fight that out, and we are going to fight that out. We're going to fight that out in the courts, and we're going to win.
I think you'll need an amendment.
No,
you don't. You think the Supreme
yeah?
Court...
Good news. You're right. We did need an amendment. We got one. It was called the 14th Amendment.
Well, all right.
Okay.
But do you think with the current makeup of the Supreme Court,
yeah,
it's more political than
okay? Let's break it down one by one. So, Tim, let me see if I can get agreement on logical and moral grounds. Okay. So, should naturalized citizens be second-class citizens, where we go, we don't really trust you?
Nope.
Like in the beginning, the reason they put that into the original Constitution hundreds of years ago is because back then the Habsburg dynasty was sending in princes into other bloodlines and royalty and stuff, and we didn't want to be taken over by the Prussian Empire or the Hungarian Empire. So that's what it's an anachronism, right?
Yeah.
So like Congressman Ted Lieu's a Democrat, came here when he was 3 years old from Taiwan, grew up in Cleveland, doesn't remember Taiwan. Right, he's a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. Patrick Bet-David's a right-winger. Was in the 101st Airborne. His family ran from Iran during the Iranian Revolution. He's Armenian Christian. Is he disloyal? Is he more disloyal than other Americans? No way. I mean, you tell me. Do you look at those guys, Arnold Schwarzenegger, etc., and go, they don't love America enough? I bet they're going to sell us out to Austria or Iran or Taiwan.
I think you find Americans will do that too. I think you'll find there's traitors of this country. We had that story about the military couple selling nuclear secrets. I think, what was that, like last year or whatever?
Yeah.
So in this globalized culture and world that's being built with communication technology, I think that the question that comes up is you have to choose one of two directions, which is they either amend the 14th or amend the Constitution away in that direction, or recognize exactly what you're saying. The issue being, what we see now is birth tourism. Mm-hmm. So based on the 14th Amendment, you have women in China, men and women in China, will hire a surrogate in California to have their kid for them, so that kid is both Chinese and American. And then what? That kid's going to grow up in China and come back to the United States and be president? They're allowed to. So
yeah, they are. I like how he just turned that into something insidious. Like, okay, we're going to have a surrogate in California, and then we're going to raise him in China, and then we're going to facilitate his rise to the top of the political echelons of power in the United States. He will be the first Chinese president of the United States, controlled entirely by the CCP. Like, it's that is literally an insane number of events.
I think.
I mean, look, my family is a perfect example. It's not perfect in that they're not anchor babies, because my sister grew up in America like I did, but she went back to Turkey, and when she came here, she wanted to have birth here more because of, not like anybody thought like, oh, these kids are going to be the president, right? No, because it's better health care, comfortable, and with her parents, with my mom and dad to take care of her. So for when she had both Hassan and Murat, my two nephews, she came back to America, where she grew up, to have the kids. But
also, chat, just as a heads up for breaking, I mean, I guess it's not really breaking at the moment, but we just real quick want to talk about what's going on in Myanmar. And what's going on over there is essentially pretty cool. Let me just put it up here. Did I accidentally close out that tab? Do that. Well, now I feel like a fool. Al Jazeera, why would you do me so dirty? There it is. ethnic rebel alliance attacks military positions across northern Myanmar. So basically, folks, for like the last couple years, Myanmar has been under the authoritarian thumb of essentially their military. The Myanmar military did a armed coup in 2021, and ever since, like, the entire country has been in disarray, with people being pretty upset about the fact that, like, their elected government can't actually govern in Myanmar, and they're instead being ruled by a military dictatorship. And so essentially what we have going on here is, like, the rebel alliance has formed in order to topple the military dictatorship and seize back control of Myanmar for the people. Unironic rebel alliance here. So, Alliance of ethnic rebel groups in Myanmar has launched coordinated attacks on the military across the country's north, with local media reporting many casualties. And it's called the Brotherhood Alliance. It's made up of the Taang National Liberation Army, the Arakan Army, and the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army. And all of these groups coordinated together on, I believe it's called Operation 1027, which was the date the military operation launched. And yeah, they've seized control of multiple towns. They attacked apparently 12 towns and settlements in the northern part of Myanmar. And it looks like Al Jazeera has some video content
Rebel
here.
fighters in the jungles of southeastern Myanmar. The unseen enemy, ground troops from Brigade 55, one of the most notorious divisions in Myanmar's army. But the rebels have had some success in recent months.
Unity among the resistance forces is important. Now we have it, and it's the first big win for us. We believe we can achieve independence for a Karenni state. After that, we will also try to help fight for other areas.
Across Kaya state, also known as Karenni, they're harassing Myanmar's military. This tarmacked road is one of the main supply routes for the army. Now it's being mined with improvised explosive devices, or IEDs. They're simple but effective. The rebels have had to learn fast.
We don't have any military background. People involved in this spring revolution didn't come from a military background. Everyone has different experiences and different ambitions. We had to take up arms because we cannot tolerate the situation.
Strategic areas close to the border with Thailand are also falling under rebel control. Over the summer, battle raged in the town of Mese for nearly a month before the military withdrew. Now the bodies of government soldiers lie where they fell, in the dirt. But those successes have created another problem. This was the police station in Mese, where the government forces took their last stand. Now the rebels have to maintain law and order.
Where we control, we have more than 200,000 people, including the IDP. And these people are conducting their own business, conducting their livelihood. And based on that, we have to provide the rule of law.
And there remains a constant threat from the air. With control slipping on the ground, Myanmar's military is relying on air power. Helicopters and fighter jets, unchallenged in the sky, mean that tactical gains are difficult to hold, and airstrikes that don't discriminate between rebel fighters and civilians. Tony Cenk, Al Jazeera.
Yeah, so basically, as this conflict has gone on, because again, this has been going on since 2021, and as it's gone on, more and more people have become dissatisfied with the military dictatorship, because again, it's a military dictatorship that wasn't popular at the beginning and is just plummeting in popularity as it goes on, and as they, bomb civilians and villages. So yeah, it's really not a good situation for the military dictatorship. For everybody else, it's great. This is really, it's a really good opportunity for Myanmar to get back on track. What will be interesting will be how these different groups are able to maintain this alliance, because as you can see, as you saw in that report, like some of these groups are kind of looking to form standalone states to break Myanmar up into small, like kind of a smaller confederacy of states, perhaps. But it's very interesting and heartening to see that these people are fighting for their freedom, and more power to them, you know? Yeah, pilots got to land sometime, and the other part is Myanmar, as far as I know, is not like super well armed. It's not like the United States where we have like infinite stockpiles of weapons just laying around, essentially, you know? So they're limited to how many like bombing runs they can do. They're limited to how many helicopters they can field. So yeah, it's very interesting stuff, and I figured it was worth talking about because it's a story that I think, especially as time goes on from here on out, this operation in particular appears to be extraordinarily well planned and coordinated. Again, they were able to attack simultaneously, mind you, 12 different towns at the same time across several different armies. So that's a level of coordination we haven't really seen so far in the Myanmar conflict, and that's really interesting, and I hope it spells the end of the military dictatorship. Sorry, I just learned that was happening, and felt like we needed to talk about that briefly. Oh, also, apparently the alliance, the Brotherhood Alliance, have brought in like international experts to basically provide skills that they will need, like to teach members of like their alliance how to actually do the part of like governing once they get in power. So it's actually pretty interesting. They do intend to win, and they do intend to be able to govern like competently, which is not always the case in civil wars like this one, but that I do find that interesting and heartening as well. Okay. Back to this.
But they did spend their childhood in Turkey. So Hassan actually came to America when he was 18. So
wow.
So I grew up in America, and culturally I'm 100% American, right?
And this is my point, right? If a couple in China has a surrogate give birth to their son in California, who is then immediately at the age of 2 months brought back to China, raised completely under the CCP, and then at 35 moves to the United States and says, I'm going to run for president, I think we'd be upset with that. We'd say, wait, hold on. And for someone like Patrick Bet-David or you, I know people are going to say politics, they might not like yours, they probably like Patrick Bet-David, but you would much rather have, in my opinion, either of you who grew up in America, American culture, and we disagree politically, it's better than someone growing up in China and having a technicality allow them to be our president.
Yeah, 100%. So it's absurd to say that we are less American than the person who went and grew up in a different country. And you're not wrong. Folks come over from China, Taiwan, and have kids in LA. That's a common phenomenon. People know that. And they do that
for tourism.
And so we can argue about whether that should be allowed or not allowed, but to say that we're less American than they are is absurd. It's totally absurd. So logically and morally, everyone gets we shouldn't be second-class citizens. We should have the same exact rights. And look, I don't know if if you guys watched the Netflix show about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mm-mm.
So it just reinforces what I would have figured.
I've seen the show Hey Arnold. Thank you for asking.
About Arnold, which is that I love America. We can get into that too, right? But But if anyone loves America more than me, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'd love
Good
it
night,
if America
Jess.
stopped blowing up kids overseas.
Yeah, yeah. Just because. Oh, and
Food
and
Not Bombs
that's
is an
another thing with the
excellent
left. I
charity
love you guys, but
organization. Thanks for the suggestion to us.
it's okay to say that America has done 100 things wrong,
Hey,
and
Berserk.
still say you love it. Okay, and for the right wing, it's
Berserky
okay
Zerk.
to say you love America and still say that we did 100 things wrong. It doesn't make us like evil. It just makes us human.
I think.
Hey, my dude. Thank you very, very much for the raid. Welcome, Raiders. My name's Riverboat Jack. I talk about the news and politics. Hit that follow button. Get cozy. We are working our way through Tim Pool and Cenk Uygur, and we'll probably take a break soon to talk about the situation in Gaza. But welcome, folks. Hope you enjoy your stay.
A large component of what we're saying, this is going to open a can of worms because I'm going to bring up Israel-Palestine, but there's a video coming out of San Francisco of a bunch of students marching through the halls chanting "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And a question is brought up is, why are these kids saying this? Why is this in their mind? My reaction is not immediately like, oh, it's the left is doing this and the right is doing this. My question is, why aren't they chanting about Burma and Myanmar? When on a conflict that started in 1948, 12,000 dead this year alone, it's been ongoing. And you know, I made the comment about why does everyone care so much about this? The question I have for these young people is, why do they care about Palestine? But
Okay, I have to be 100% honest with you. There was no pre-watch happening here. I absolutely did not pre-watch this segment and then do the Myanmar segment right before he asked this question. Genuinely just found out about the latest operation and thought it was really interesting and wanted to share it with you. No pre-watch Reno, okay? I usually will tell you guys if I pre-watch. Has anyone told you yet that you have a lovely voice? Not tonight, but thank you very much, Trans Girl Jade. Doing my best with what I got. Grabs horse tranquilizers. Vorse.
but not Myanmar, and it really is the information that they're consuming, where the information is coming from. And I think, as you mentioned, the media sows division.
I want to know how often Tim Pool has talked about Myanmar on his show. I really want to know. I want to know. Someone get me the counter.
Don't so much believe that the corporate American interests are trying to cause mass fighting between left and right. I do think there's a political component of it's good to have left and right fighting. I believe more so foreign interests are hell-bent on making sure we keep fighting, especially as you've got war in Ukraine, you've got now war in the Middle East. There is a vested interest in watching the United States rip itself to shreds, which results in young people, whether you agree or disagree on their position on Palestine, being polarized in that direction.
Yeah. So a lot to unpack there too. By the way, before I get to that, which is a really important question, I should say that, look, whether you think, to finish up the earlier topic, whether you think that you're dissatisfied with Biden as an option in your left wing, or you think you're a naturalized citizen and you think, yes, God damn it, take this to the Supreme Court and be done with this thing. Let's get a decision once and for all. Chip in $1 at jankforamerica.com is just like a protest, like, no, obviously it shouldn't be Biden. And yeah, obviously naturalized citizens should have 100% the same rights.
And you know, right-wing personalities are rooting for you too. You said they should want Biden in the race. That's true. But a lot of people have said any dollar going to Cenk is a dollar not going to Biden. Is a dollar not going to the DNC.
Look, I even got the URL, BidenIsGoingToLose.com. Okay, BidenIsGoingToLose.com, because he is. And so for me, I'm lunging at the wheel, right?
Yeah.
Because this
wheel of the beast?
At the wheel of the Titanic.
Yeah.
Because everybody's going around rearranging the chairs on the deck. I'm like, guys, the chairs aren't going to help the iceberg. The polling shows it's a goddamn iceberg and we're going to hit it. And I'm not going to join that party. Let's go back to Palestine.
Well, no, let's just do this.
Dude.
What are your campaign positions? What do you hope to achieve as president?
Oh yeah, so that's the other reason.
And then we'll argue about them.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, my positions are enormously popular. And so what's the difference between me and, let's say, a standard Democrat that might say the same things? I'm not full of crap, and they are. Okay, so, and I'll back that up. So I'll back up both propositions, that my positions are intensely popular, and a lot of the other Democrats are unfortunately full of crap. So, okay, let's take paid family leave. Polls at 84%. That's giving moms 12 weeks off after they have a baby. Right wing loves that position. 3/4 of the
Hey, gay
Republicans
Aaron.
want it as well, because I mean, you want more kids, right?
Yep.
And so
tax credits for more babies.
Yeah, those type of positions poll really, really well among right wingers and really, really well among left wingers. So we all agree: do not send moms back to the assembly line in the coal mines the day after they deliver.
I gotta pause real quick. I'm not sure we got the question early on of how do you define left and right?
Yeah, so there are things that are traditionally left and traditionally right. But I define progressive, for example, in chapter 2 of my book, and I define it a little bit differently than others do. So for me, and it'll frustrate some of you guys because you'll think those are really American positions. You guys don't get to claim them, but I do. So one is we believe in expanding the circle of liberty. And so you might think like, whoa, no, man, right wing's liberty, right? Are you? Because like we think that gay people and trans people and Muslims and everyone else should have the same exact rights. And oftentimes the right wing goes, nah, not really. I mean, I think trans people should be separated out here and here and here, et cetera, right? So we can get into those debates, but I believe in expanding the circle of liberty, and that is a left wing and progressive position. And then you've got justice for all. And again, you would say, well, what do you mean? Justice? Of course, we're all for justice.
Unite, ha ha ha.
Tracy, Ryu, thank you for gifting Gay Aaron a sub. I appreciate it very, very much. Hope they do too. And yeah, like here's the issue, right? And this is what amazing screen grab right here. But the issue is that like when people talk about, oh, Americans all agree on X thing, the majority of Americans are going to agree that like a certain thing is a problem, like homelessness. You know, Americans will agree we have a homelessness problem that we need to address. But how do we address it is the difference between these two things, right? Between left and right. Because the right would solve homelessness by just criminalizing it and throwing the homeless in prison. Right? That's fundamentally the conservative idea of solving homelessness. And the left-leaning idea is providing them with homes. Yeah, and then there's the libertarians who just want the purge. So, like, part of the flaw in his policy goal is that, as far as his policy goals go, and again, I haven't been to his page recently, maybe he's updated it and has, like, a lot more in-depth stuff about his policies, but the issue is he's going on, like, what polls as popular policy, but the policies that he has listed, like, are things like end corruption. Well, how do you go about ending corruption? You know, how you go about doing that matters a lot. Give them homes? Yeah, it's cheaper to give homeless people homes than it is to put them in prison. It costs like $60,000 some a year to put someone in prison. Like, you can just give them a home. And that costs less money. And also, leaving them homeless incurs a lot of different costs to society as well. And it's actually cheaper and more economically feasible to just build them homes as opposed to leaving them to suffer homelessness or to imprison them.
Are you? Because right now, black people and white people smoke pot at the same rates, and black people get arrested at 4 times the rate. And so, and part of the reason why I said in the beginning, but the lines are moving, is because now the right wing has moved.
Look, I don't think. Look, Anna and Cenk have both taken more conservative bends lately. I don't think either of them want to kill the homeless. We can disagree with their policies without like painting them as like actual monsters.
Position. And so the voters say, no, that is unjust. You're right. And stop putting those guys in prison. Plus it costs money. Plus it's not fair. Plus it leads to more racial issues, etc. Right? But the Republican politicians are like, oh, no way. Black people should be arrested at 4 times the rate of white people. We're not changing a goddamn thing.
They're not literally saying that.
Okay.
But I see your point.
Yes. But they are through their legislation. You're right. They're not saying that quote. Well, so the idea here,
yeah,
and the last
look,
one is equality of opportunity.
Look, if that ever changes,
and
body
so
without
some of the
soul,
left might say no equality
I'll change
of
my
results,
tune.
but I don't agree with that at all. It's equality of opportunity. And then again, with equality of opportunity, you say, well, the right wing's in favor of that too, and maybe with the voters, but not the politicians, because so for example, college for all is equality of opportunity. So everybody's got a shot at college, and my dad. They did this in Turkey in the 1960s, okay? And we're the richest nation on earth right now. And if Turkey could afford it in the 60s, America can afford it now. And what it does is it takes guys who are poor, like my dad, who was a dirt poor farmer in southeastern Turkey, and gives them an opportunity. And then he becomes a mechanical engineer. He sets up his own business. It's better for the economy, hires hundreds of people. If I keep going, most of the right wing will agree with me, but their politicians say, hell no, that costs rich people a nickel and a dime. I'm never going to do that for the middle class in America.
But I think all of these can be broken down to the more complex nuances of the argument. So when it comes to, I'll just go quickly, but then we can start and focus on one. When it comes to, say, like you mentioned, trans rights, it's a question of when does one person's rights and privileges infringe on someone else's rights and privileges? What is a right? What is a privilege?
I would say that about guns, but yes.
And right, that's a complicated one. And then when it comes to college, my first thought is I don't think college for all is the answer. I think school reform first. If we can get better education at the lower grades and through high school, we may find something totally different happens with college. If you look at the greatest generation into the boomers, they did.
Yes. See, we just need better education until high school, and they'll be graduating as little Einsteins.
Need college. Something changed. And I think what we're seeing now with college is these kids are being sent to daycares where, you know, when my college years, I didn't go. All of my friends were just partying all the time and learned nothing. They got out of college.
Maybe you had shitty friends, Tim. Maybe you still have shitty friends.
22 with no careers, no plans, no experience, and massive debt. And I've already been working in, you know, I was working for O'Hare at the airport for 2 years. I ended up working at a nonprofit, eventually became a director really, really quickly. So I'm 23 with a salaried position as a director of a nonprofit. My friends are working at Starbucks. College did not actually help them. So my view is college can be good, but we got to reform the system first. Instead of just
his anecdote isn't even his time in college. His anecdote is his shitty friends' time in college.
And let's send everybody to college. Like, well, we're wasting a lot of money with bad schooling right now. Let's fix it however that needs to be fixed.
So
also, I really wonder if his friends are still friends with him if he talks about them that way.
Yeah, I don't agree. I understand what you're saying. I don't really agree with that. I think we could do both at the same time. But as long as we're having a conversation about how to actually fix it and we're putting our heads together, I'm down. Right.
I just think the earlier years of someone's life are the most important. And if we can get one of the initiatives my buddies were talking about 10 years ago was converting libraries into hacker spaces, effectively workshops where the kids want to be there because they're making little hot air balloons or they're.
But you know what would happen next, Tim?
What happened?
They would immediately look at porn, and then and then the librarian nowadays it'd be in Tennessee, and then the librarian would get arrested for 20 years because she let the kids accidentally see gay porn. Like straight porn, she'd be like, "Go for it."
What? Also, libraries already struggle. This is just people look up porn at libraries. You can look up porn on your phone on any Wi-Fi network in America. Like, what are you talking about, bud?
All day long. Oh, somebody's gay! Arrest the librarian! That's what would happen.
Well, just don't let kids get access to this stuff at all. And
yeah, I mean, first of all, that makes the
I see Tim Pool has never interacted with a child before in his life. Just don't allow children to get access to that at all. Oh, yeah, who would have thought about that? You know, children will log into porn sites and they see the only for 18 plus button, and then they just go, "Oh, I'm not 18. I will be responsible and not go out to this website." That's absolutely what children do.
The whole book banning and all that stuff and all the stuff that DeSantis passed, totally absurd. It's they're like, okay, we're going to keep these out of those kids' schools, and then that way.
Honestly, in Tim Pool's world, your best bet is just gouging out the eyes of your children. That way, they can never see pornography.
Won't have it in the libraries or the classrooms. They will not have any access to it, dude. It's called the internet. Okay, they can get access to any kind of sex, any kind of materials, any kind of literature. They could get. They're going to find out that gay people exist online. I'm afraid of saying it because then Republican politicians are going to want to ban the internet.
But my actual position is, yeah.
Unironically, yeah, they would.
I don't understand how we got to the point where a child can't go into an adult bookstore, but a child is allowed to go on porn websites.
Yeah, and that
a child isn't allowed to go on a porn website, Tim. There's just no way to filter out children from being able to access them. Like there's no feasible way to make that happen. And any feasible way that you could make to have that happen would involve like massive invasions of privacy.
So that ship has sailed,
I mean, something's got to be done.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. What has to be done is parents.
Look, if you make sure that kids can't accidentally go to a porn site, you know, obviously they'll never learn what titties are. You know, kids don't know what titties are. They don't know what butts are. It's true.
Parenting. The right,
yes.
And so the right wing weirdly lost track of parenting because they think that they're the parenting kings, but then they're always like, society has kidnapped my kids and they gave them this. No, look, I see things in society that I don't
also,
agree.
Again, no one on the left is like, yes, show your children pornography. Like that's not a left wing position. That's like a fringe wacko, like, you know, guy who masturbates on the street position.
With. And you know what I do? I sit my kids down and I talk to them and I say, here's what's right and here's what's wrong and here's why, right?
But do you know why the issue of the books comes up? It's because parents were not being informed and the information was being withheld from them. That's why the bill was parental rights in education, one component of which was 3rd grade and below didn't have access to sex education. They removed that.
So
I would love to talk about Don't Say Gay bills with Tim Pool. I would love to talk about it.
Yeah, Tim, that part's easy, right? If the Republicans left it at, hey, 3rd grade and below, remove all sex education, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. We're not talking to kids below 3rd grade. And you left it at that. Great. Nobody's got a problem. If they have a problem, they're going to.
Neither of these dipshits know a single thing about sex ed curriculums. Like, guys, sex ed curriculum in like pre-3rd grade literally consists of talking about like what the names for different body parts are and like bodily autonomy, like the idea that you like someone needs permission from you in order to like touch you, you know, like so that like you know you aren't getting like unwanted touching, you know, that the idea of consent in that way and ownership of your body. Those are like the basic concepts up to 3rd grade that are reinforced. And honestly, that's super, super important because then if someone does touch them inappropriately, A, they know that that touch was inappropriate, and B, they can describe what happened to a trusted adult, which means that they can catch whoever did that. It makes it much easier to catch child abusers and makes it much easier to like prevent more cases of that happening. And like, it's genuinely deeply beneficial for like the community, for kids, and it lays the groundwork for future, like, you know, dedicated sex ed courses. But up until like 3rd grade, there's not a dedicated sex ed class. It's just generally integrated into the curriculum. You know, stuff about like learning your body parts, learning good touch, bad touch. And when you frame it like that, it doesn't sound so scary, does it? When you frame it as like, oh, that's actually a pretty common sense thing to teach children to keep them safe. Oh, well, that doesn't sound scary. Doesn't give you the images in your head of like showing porn to children. Well, with Otro, it's not just like one day of class, right? Because it's integrated into the curriculum. It's something that is both one day of class, but then reinforced, you know? So that you can, like, a teacher can like bend down to a student and be like, hey, you know, hey Timmy, I saw that you gave Tommy a hug when Tommy didn't want a hug. And do you remember when we learned about that in class? And like, oh yeah, I was supposed to ask first. Like, that's right. You know, like, you can then reinforce it through the rest of the curriculum and the rest of like the class time. And like, that's how kids learn. It's the reinforcement.
And lose anyway. That's an extremist position, right? So, but then it didn't.
Well, okay. Well, very knifey duck. I can't not click on that link.
Kids, there's nothing more cool than being hugged by someone you like. But if someone tries to touch you in a place or in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's no good. It's your body. No one has the right to touch you if you don't want them to. So what do? First, you say no. Then, you get out of there. Most important, you gotta tell someone you trust. Like your parents, your teacher, a police officer.
Yeah, unironically, that is the sex ed that Republicans find so objectionable. It's just that integrated into a curriculum and then reinforced. That is what conservatives find so goddamn objectionable about sex ed. Yeah, apparently Sonic the Hedgehog just groomed all of you. I'm sorry.
Stop at 3rd grade. Then it went to
12, I think.
Yeah, it went to elementary. Then it went to junior high. And I'm like, okay, but in junior high, they got to start learning sex ed. That's when they get 12, 13, 14. All right, then they went to high school.
Well, and the other thing is, a lot of kids need to learn about sex ed before they really should, before the common conception is, before the common conception of when they should be learning sex ed happens. You know, like, you can point at like, oh yeah, 12, 13, 14, that's when kids should be learning sex ed. Except when we look at the data, it turns out a lot of kids, by the time they are 13, 14, 15, are already sexually active, like a shockingly large percentage. And the idea for sex ed is to keep kids safe. So that means the education has to happen before most of them are sexually active. So it needs to happen like 10, 11 in order for them to stay safe.
Well, I'm like, what are we doing here, guys?
But here's the issue.
Yeah, exactly. Nemredic is like, says, a 12-year-old had a kid in my class. And it's just like, that's the thing, right? Like, kids experiment with each other, and like, that's a thing that can happen, and it's more likely to happen if kids have no idea about sex ed.
And the other thing is, Tim, sorry, but if it was like, hey, you know what, we don't want them exposed to violent material or sexual material, okay, right? But once they started going, no, but we don't want them exposed to the gay people and trans people, and we don't want anybody talking about that crap, okay? Then I'm like, okay, then you don't care about sex, and this isn't about parenting. It's just you don't like those people. Just be honest.
So the issue that I see is when I did sex ed, I was in 5th grade. Parents signed off on a permission slip. There was only one kid out of my class who was actually taken out of the room, and the parents were like, he's not allowed. And so I don't know what he did. He went to lunch or something.
Yeah.
Sex ed was the boys and the girls were separated. They then explained organs, organ function, and the process of fertilization, how babies are made and things like that. And we were all like 10 years old. And now we actually have a sample of these books that are considered sex ed, but it's actually kink, talking about scat. And if you want me to show you the book, I'll show you the book.
No, it's.
I mean, so when
I'm good on scat.
Right. This is what happens then is I think you've talked about this too. Someone on the right will say like, there's a parent, and not even necessarily a right-wing person, says, I discovered this book in my school which shows graphic kink depictions and kink education about things totally unrelated to reproduction and sex. And then you get a knee-jerk reaction from the tribal left saying
I'm gonna need to see receipts on this children's book that Tim Pool claims he has that has a graphic depiction of scat. I'm sorry, I'm gonna need to know what book he's talking about. Yeah, I literally don't believe him unless he's talking about like a book for like, 18-year-olds that was in a high school library. I'd believe that.
You want to ban books, you're anti-gay. And it's like, wait, hold on. Like, this book just shows someone giving a blowjob, and playing with strap-ons and things like this. That's not for kids.
But Tim, if you guys left it there,
yeah. Sex ed doesn't include learning what blowjobs are. What the fuck are you talking about, Tim?
It would have been just a fringe.
Well, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, if that would have been just a fringe part of the left arguing for dildos in class. Okay, that would not have been the entirety of the left. It would not have become a national issue.
For sure, but
you guys didn't leave it there. Then you went to like any book that mentions gay people.
But you say we, like we did not. Like
okay.
Whoever we are here at Timcasts, we're weirdos or something. But you're right. Yeah, Ron DeSantis then expands it. Florida then goes up to I think 12th grade and said keep these books out. But there's not. The problem I see is when the right comes out and says, hey, that's kind of a problem, you get a tribalist reaction defending it. And, we had Emma Vigilant on from Majority Report.
Yeah. He's still mad about it.
And I asked her if she was in favor of whatever book do we have over there. We have This Book is Gay, which actually describes scat. And like, that's just.
Okay, let's take a look. This book is Gay by Juno Dawson. Scat. I need to know exactly what it's talking about. Oh. Wait. Is this it? Do we have the I think we found it, chat. Oh god. Oh man, it graphically describes scat as a fetish. And it is literally scat eating poop. It provides a definition. Oh my god, dude. We get. Oh, that's. Okay. It also describes blowies. Oral sex is popping another dude's pee in your mouth hole. And he'd pop yours and his. Honestly, this is fine. This is like for high schoolers. This is This is totally fine.
It's the most extreme example of like, hey, don't give that to kids. And
I love that he went with the scat example, and the scat example in the actual book is literally 2 words: eating poop. That's it.
Goes, so you're for censorship? I'm like, well, are you you think kid? My response is, it's simple.
I love that by that logic that Tim is using, like, oh, it has scat defined in the book. It's so graphic and disgusting. It's like, oh, okay. Do you want to? Hey, Tim, do you want to ban the dictionary too? It has a definition for fucking in it. Do you want to ban that too? Because kids can look up what a penis is in a dictionary.
I am for censorship. I 100% am for censorship. I think Facebook should censor. I think X should censor, and YouTube should censor. But what should censor is what is being argued. I don't think YouTube should allow graphic terrorist videos of beheadings and things like this. I have no problem with them putting filters and restrictions and making sure kids don't get that. The same as I think schools should be like, hey, this book's got someone giving a blowjob in it. Maybe we should take that to the library.
A dick.
But the knee-jerk reaction of
oh, very knifey duck, blowing this case right wide open. You mean a dictionary? There was a dick in there the entire time.
You support censorship. I'm like, not an argument. You know, or unless you're just trying to defend these books.
But by the way, though, what you're saying applies exactly to the right wing as well about those platforms where they.
Yeah, no, that's what always Naughty Fox. That has always gotten me too. I don't know why he uses Tim Pool is rich as hell. Why does he have a fake flintlock?
Where the platforms say, hey, we're not going to allow terrorist videos on, we're not going to allow child porn on, and we're not going to allow Nazis on. And then they go, oh, censorship, oh, our beloved poor Nazis, they're not allowed on anymore. You left-wing censors, right? Like,
but they're correct.
Well, hold on. Let's break it down. What do we mean by censorship? Like, to your point, we all agree with some degree of censorship, right? I hope everybody agrees don't allow child porn anywhere, right? Easy, right? So then the question is, where do you draw the lines? So like we already agreed, Ron DeSantis was wrong. He drew the line too far out to 12th grade. He went too far in banning things that weren't about sex, but were just mentioning gay people. I don't know if you agree with that, but I'm saying it. Okay.
Well, did you watch his press conference where they go through the books?
So look, you pick out individual books and you say, hey, these have inappropriate sexual.
I wonder. I really wish Cenk would ask Tim Pool about the Diary of Anne Frank being banned by a Florida school district. I really wish that would be asked.
Stuff, and it's for under 3rd grade, under 5th grade, etc. No problem with that conversation. Okay, so it's when you get to don't mention gay people that I will never accept that under any circumstance.
I agree though, and I think that is more of a, I don't know how to describe that. I think at least for us, the conversation we're having is, there's a teacher in Illinois who gave kids access to This Book is Gay, which it teaches, it was to 10-year-olds how to use Grindr. And it's kind of like...
Okay.
I'm going to call bullshit on that one. This Book is Gay, Illinois. She offered an LGBTQ-themed book to her middle schoolers. Parents filed a police report. Sarah Bonner has been an Illinois middle school teacher for 20 years. She always tried to offer her students a diverse collection of books. This year, a parent called the police over her book choice. It started on Monday, March 13th, 2023, when she held what she calls a book tasting for students. I wanted to give them a smattering of fiction and nonfiction to choose from on a day we call Reading Monday, Bonner, 42, tells Today.com. We just read and celebrate books. One of those books was Juno Dawson's This Book is Gay. It's a best-selling nonfiction that's been billed by its publisher as an entertaining and informative instruction manual for anyone coming out as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans. By Wednesday, I received notice that parents had gotten a hold of pictures from that book that their child had taken in class. By Friday, I was told that parents had filed a police report against me for child endangerment. Uh-huh. Again, the pictures from the book. Pictures from this book are literally like oh no, the horror the horror though. Or you know, they might also be worried about like this image, you know? What if their child was questioning their gender or sexual identity? Or oh no, look. The most inoffensive drawing of a vagina I've ever seen in my life. The horror. Doing the sex. Honestly, this is probably, you know, more people should read This Book is Gay, I'm saying, just because it, you know, it looks like it's gonna teach you how to do better sex. Look, that clitoris really does like being licked and kissed. And again, girls can take in turns to perform oral sex, or if feeling adventurous, they can perform it at the same time. You know, guys should read this. Maybe they wouldn't miss the clitoris so often, okay? I'm just saying. You'd probably have better sex if you read This Book is Gay. Anyway, this is the horrific content that is too graphic for children in middle school aged kids. The horror.
Okay, guys, again,
she got they called the cops on her. But
don't call the cops on her either, right? Like, don't overreact. So let's say that that happened to my kids. My kids are 13 and 11, right? And so they were just around that age, and some weirdo teachers teaching them about Grindr. Okay, the reaction I would have is first I'd sit the kids down and go, hey, ignore that. That's for when you grow up and you make your own decision.
Okay, also, the reason Grindr is talked about at all is that in the context of the book, it's talking about how, like, adults, like, hook up with each other in, like, queer culture. And, like, yes, kids should probably know that so they don't just, like, go on Grindr and, like, put themselves in danger. Because again, there's no real way to stop them from doing that, which is why these companies, on dating apps in particular, need to have protocols in place to make sure that kids abusing the platform don't, like, put themselves in danger.
That's not the thing that you should be concerned about now. I'd have a good talk with them about the context. Then I would go to the school and say, guys, what are we doing? Right? You can't teach Grindr. What are you doing? Right?
Did you see what happened when parents did that?
Well, but the problem, Tim, is no, I didn't. But
the FBI called them terrorists.
No, but so you guys get so carried away with the FBI calling people terrorists because you think that they're doing it in such an expansive way, but they're not. It's like this hysteria. FBI is mainly targeting domestic terrorists that are actually right-wing terrorists. And so, like, then again, people catch feelings because they're like, right-wing can't be terrorists. No, definitely can be terrorists. The dude sent pipe bombs to anyone who opposed Donald Trump. That guy's a terrorist.
Agreed.
Okay? And he happens to be a right-wing terrorist. And the FBI is saying at this point, the FBI, which is historically massively right-wing, the idea that the FBI is some sort of left-wing deep state is hilarious, not backed up by a single fact. But so the right wing, so the FBI is saying, hey guys, we wish it weren't the case, but most of the domestic terrorists in America now are right wingers. And
yeah, the unfortunate reality that the FBI has to deal with is that in America, and by the way, the FBI suppressed this for a pretty long time. but that the majority of extremists in America are right wing, and that's why you get like these dudes showing up to like drag time story hours, like packing heat, like holding like 5 different guns in their arms at the same time. You know, that's why they're getting like death threats and like threatening mass violence if like certain libraries carry certain books or have certain readings. You know, like, yeah.
And they're all trying to kill anyone who disagrees with Donald Trump.
I just think that's wrong, and I think I certainly think there are right-wing.
And by the way, I just want to be clear. That doesn't mean all right-wingers or a majority of right-wingers are terrorists. It just means of the terrorists that are around now, which is a small group, right? Unfortunately, most of them are right-wingers at this point.
I think it's completely inverted, but the bias comes from the extremity of the actions taken by the terrorists. So you'll end up with a story of a guy, perhaps Maine. I think the story is more about what happened in Maine. He was mentally unwell and he was targeting his friends, is what they're reporting now. He thought his friends were talking behind his back and he went nuts. But
by the way, they're all mentally unwell.
Of course.
No, but it's not of course, because the right wing says anytime it's a white person or a right winger, they go mentally unwell. And because I'm honest, I agree, right? And so, and they'll have their half of them will have their manifestos like in Charlotte.
Also, just update as of 2 hours ago, suspect in Maine shooting rampage is dead from apparent self-inflicted gunshot. So you can, if you're in Maine, you can be a little bit more relaxed.
Charlottesville, he had a manifesto about race wars and how black people were terrible, and that's why he went inside a black church and shot him up. El Paso was against Latinos. There's the synagogue shootings. So these are political, there's no question. But no one who's mentally well goes into a synagogue or a church and shoots people. But that is also true of Muslims. When it comes to right wing, they're like, oh, yeah, that's so true when it comes to right wing. It's so true. They're just mentally unwell. They don't represent us. Muslims. Oh, it's all Muslims. It's all Muslims. They're all mentally well. That's why they shot up people. They don't have any mental health problems. Their problem is that they're Muslim.
Well,
No. That's exactly bigotry. No, all those dudes have massive mental health problems as well. So instead of saying, hey, I hate black people, they're saying I hate the West or whatever it is.
But so here's my point. The examples you gave are these extreme examples that are horrifying. We try to prevent, and they're acts of evil, abject evil. On the left, you get what I would call more blunt terror. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, the George Floyd riots. When you had small towns across this country, Michael Tracy's reporting, showing a grocery store with its windows smashed out, and they spray paint on the boarded up window saying, please don't hurt us. When you have people in Berkeley, I was at a bar in Berkeley and they had Trump sucks, Trump is a pig on the window. And I'm having a drink, and I asked, this is like 2017, I was like, you guys not big Trump fans? And the bartender's like, no, we like him. And I'm like, why would you put that in the window? If we don't, they'll smash our windows out and attack us. That people live in, have you been to Berkeley? There's a Burger King with a big sign in the window saying, we are not a corporate chain, we are family owned, please don't hurt us. I'm like, why would you live?
Also, I just don't know, I don't know that yeah. Sorry, my brain was still stuck on the main shooter. Like, I don't know that we know what his motivation is. He just seems like he just spun a bunch of bullshit and threw that out there and then moved on, which seems to be like kind of the case. Sorry, I'm gonna back up like 10 seconds. I believe his hearing voices was a Lucille.
That people live in, have you been to Berkeley? There's a Burger King with a big sign in the window saying, we are not a corporate chain, we are family owned, please don't hurt us. I'm like, why would you live that way? You look at May 29th, when far leftists firebombed the White House grounds and St. John's Church. And this is not major news, there's no committee hearings. But if you're somebody who lives, I'll give you a more recent example. When I'm in Reston, Virginia, having dinner with,
source needed? Citation needed here? Ah, yes, the Antifa firebombed the White House and nobody said anything. Citation needed, motherfucker.
Based sex ed Jack.
Tracy Kairyu, thank you very much for gifting with Otro a sub. I appreciate it.
With the team here, a guy comes up and says, "You're not going to hear this a lot in Reston, but I'm a big fan." And I was like, actually, like 4 people already have come up and okay, that's the blunt terror of, in a town I live in, I have to whisper and I'm scared that someone might find out I listen to Timcast. When in reality, people who worked there and other people had already said this, but they all seem to say say the same things. I'm scared to express my opinions.
That's not terrorism, Tim.
But it
So,
is.
No,
It
hold
is
on,
people
hold
who
on.
are living in.
Yeah, they aren't saying it in hushed tones because they're worried that their neighbors are gonna kill them, Tim. They're worried that their neighbors are gonna think they're assholes because they are. It's just not terrorism. Like, your community thinking that you're an asshole isn't terrorism being done on you, Tim. That's not how that works.
Terror
let me clarify.
for political reasons.
No. Let me clarify. Okay, so
Firebombing the White House is not terror.
So no, firebombing, of course, is.
They did.
But that's Tim. That is enormously rare on the left. So you can always go back to, hey, the guy who shot Steve Scalise. Hey, we found it one time. Okay. What you're talking about is cultural domination. And is that true in Berkeley, that the left dominates in a way that is oppressive to the right? Like
It's not the right. I'm talking about
no, I get it.
Asian salon owners.
No, I know, and to the middle as well, right? Yes, but is it also true that you'll get the same kind of cultural domination in the middle of Alabama? So if you're in the middle of Alabama and you put up a Trump sucks sign, you are going to have massive problems.
You will not get someone coming to your house and threatening to kill you.
You're
like you
nuts.
Do
Yes.
Are you kidding me, dude? Oh god, dude. Let's see. Yeah. ABC News finds 54 cases invoking Trump in connection with violence, threats, and alleged assaults. Uh-huh. Sure, bud.
You will. In fact, there's a guy who had a Trump sign in the middle of Pennsylvania, and his neighbor, a Biden sign or something, and his neighbor shot him and killed him because he's like, "You're against Trump. I hate you. I'm going to murder you."
Biden sign?
I forget what the sign was, but it was something either against
Hey,
Trump or
Larsers.
pro Biden or pro something. It happened a couple of years ago. You could definitely look it up. And so, yeah, no. There's huge parts of this country that if you say Trump sucks, they will physically assault you. I mean, look, forget the middle of the country. When I ran for Congress, we did a panel up in Palmdale, which is in, outer parts of LA. But there's like far right militia types up there as well, right? Even though it's mainly Democratic. And so it's a bunch of massive right wingers came to our panel, and I said one thing against Trump, and they nearly assaulted me. They're like, "How you can't say that about our president," right? Well, then they say Barack Hussein Obama's a Muslim terrorist. I said, wait a minute, I thought we weren't saying bad things about presidents.
Yeah.
What happened, right? So there are people that are massively full of crap on both sides.
But perhaps the issue then is these types you're describing live in sparsely populated areas. You maybe don't see them. They don't have a larger impact on greater society because of the density of cities and the amount of people who live there.
No, but they have a massive impact. The right wing does in the middle of the country. What we hear all the time on the Young Turks is, "Oh, thank God, I thought I was alone." Right? Like, I see you guys, and it gives me sanity because I live in the middle of Tennessee, I live in the middle of Arkansas, I live in the middle of Texas, and everyone here thinks that if you're against Trump, you're the devil, and you molest kids, and it's just like what you would call cultural terrorism. And
But
so I don't think that's fair to call it terrorism on the right or the left. It's just cultural domination in certain areas. And part of what I'm trying to do here is shake people out of that and go, I hear you, and look at all the things we disagree on and all the things that I've said that probably made a bunch of right-wingers angry already. But let's not lose track of the things we also agree on.
Well, so why you saw the meme?
Yeah, look, no conservative would just assault like a left-leaning protester. No conservative would just do that.
I'll fucking eat your fucking face off, motherfucker! You want a fucking piece? Hey. Turn it off! Hey, you guys shouldn't even be here, bud. I'll fuck you off! Hey! Get up, motherfucker! Get up! Come on now. Come on. Come on. Come on, don't do that.
Hey, we're just practicing free speech, bro. Somewhere else, but don't be right here. We're practicing our free speech, bro. Come on, bud. Hey, just come on. You guys gotta go figure out, bud.
Always have to
Go,
look so
yeah,
low.
cross the street,
Okay,
bud.
let's go.
Just cross the street.
If y'all want to move, I'll move away.
Hey, just go across the street. That's all. You're good. Let him move out of the way.
Smash you, homeboy!
Smash you, homeboy. The beginning of a great homoerotic porno. Anyway, yeah, conservatives wouldn't just do that, walk up and punch someone for having a different political belief. Also, Kyryu, thank you very much for gifting Larzers a sub. I appreciate that so goddamn much.
From Elon Musk where it shows the line moving further and further left, and then the guy who was in the middle is now on the right.
Yeah, that line is the most full of crap line I have ever seen.
That's what
I did the exact opposite line when I was a host on MSNBC a dozen years ago, because in reality there's two different lines. There's the line that is for the country, and then there's the line that is for Washington. Okay, and the Washington line has moved so far right I can't see it anymore. I was a liberal Republican growing up. I voted for George H.W. Bush. I was a kid when Reagan was around, but I loved Reagan, Shining City on a Hill, etc. But there was a thing called a liberal Republican back then, where you could be socially liberal but still be a Republican. That just doesn't exist anymore. So when I say
conservative Democrats, yeah, it's like everyone's talking about Manchin. He can't win.
Yeah. So, but Manchin's not a moderate. Manchin is a corporatist through and through.
Oh, agreed.
Okay, so
he's gonna lose.
So, whereas
I think he's already out. I don't know.
Whereas I was slight center right growing up, with almost the same positions, I'm now considered massively left in Washington. Okay, why? Because they all became corporatists. Biden was known as the senator from MBNA, which was a credit card company back then. That was his nickname. Yeah. Like, even the people in the Senate, they're like, oh, it's so funny. Even among us sellouts, Joe Biden's the biggest sellout. Let's call him the senator from MBNA, right? So we lost it. This is chapter 5 of my book. I'm not trying to plug the book. It's a natural thing that's coming up, and I want to go back to policy, etc. But chapter 4, I explain how we lost the Democratic Party. So the chapter 3 is Republicans suck. Why Republicans suck? Okay, and that explains how the Republican Party went from the party of Lincoln to, in my opinion, the party of hate. Okay, so the party changed completely, and they changed completely because of the Southern strategy. But for the Democrats, they think, oh, you're so right about that, Cenk. But I'm like, you think your party didn't change? We used to be the party of FDR. And now we're the party of credit card companies.
Wealthy, yeah. Vox, right? This was 2016. Vox called them, Democrats have become the new party of the wealthy elites.
Yeah, and it breaks my heart. But there's a lot of truth to that. But that's not the left. That's corporate Democrats in Washington. Okay.
Yeah, I subscribe to Jacobin magazine. Jacobin has been very strong on defending free speech. And so...
yes, I'm sure you read it cover to cover every month.
When I started seeing the articles they were posting, and of course I know a ton of people who have been consistently very left economically, and I started seeing the articles and I started reading Jacobin articles, I'm like, this is the kind of left that I want to have an argument with, one that understands the importance of free speech. And I can respect that.
Why aren't you inviting Jacobin writers onto your show, Tim?
It's important to hear what they have to say when they're making their arguments.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm a massive I'm very much in favor of freedom of speech. So then we talked about censorship earlier. So then the question is, again, where do you draw the lines? The world is not black and white.
Well,
right?
so this is a point I did want to make on that. You said, you know, the right saying, oh no, our precious Nazis or whatever. But it's not so much our precious Nazis. It's especially right now with Israel-Palestine, the people who are going to bear the brunt of those that legislation is the pro-Palestine left.
100% agree.
So Ron DeSantis just banned. This is a bit of debate right now among Republicans. Vivek Ramaswamy is very critical of Ron DeSantis, saying this student group should be banned and forced to reform because in their school toolkit they say they are Hamas. They are not. They are Palestinians in exile who are a part of the resistance that is. I don't know how they explicitly define it. They say these are resistance fighters who attacked. We are part of that resistance. And so Ron's argument is that means they are declaring support for a terrorist organization. Therefore, we have to disband this group. Vivek says, oh, it's a bunch of kids in a college saying stupid things. Let them say stupid things.
I agree with that.
But this is what happens when you go after free speech.
Yeah. So then let's talk about where the line should be, because everybody could look up these videos. The Young Turks have been around 21 years. We're the longest.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of just assuming going on here and vague hand waviness. I feel like if you're talking about this specific thing, you should know the specifics of it. Otherwise, it just sounds like you don't know what you're talking about, and that might be the most accurate way to describe Tim Pool's programming.
Internet show in history. As far as a daily show, we've been around longer than literally any other show in internet history.
When you guys started, you there were no social media platforms. You were using weird web players and stuff like old school.
Yeah, we use web players on our own website. We try to get out the word through Yahoo Messenger, through AOL. We were AOL bloggers. We put up videos on MySpace. So we're as old school gets. And so having been around so long, you have all these videos that show indisputably your consistency, right? So I was against Don Imus being fired. I didn't think Rush Limbaugh should be censored, or Glenn Beck, or when I was outraged when Megyn Kelly was fired. I'm like, okay.
I mean, I don't think that like there should be a systemic silencing of Glenn Beck or whatever, but I also wouldn't be upset if he was. You know, like I can't pretend I would be. I wouldn't be pretty happy about that.
So she said this thing about blackface. Okay, it's wrong, and I can explain why it's wrong. But if you fire her, nobody's even going to find out why it's wrong.
She didn't say. She asked.
She asked. That's right. She didn't even say it. That's right. So if like Al Roker was upset, then guys, why don't you take the opportunity to bring in Al Roker and Megyn Kelly and have an hour-long conversation? And guess what? That'd be the highest-rated show you did that year, right? And then people would learn what's wrong with blackface. Instead, you fire her, you never have that conversation, and a whole bunch of white people who've never understood the history of blackface go, what the hell, man? I don't get it.
Exactly.
So I was Michael Jackson in 1983 in Halloween. Well, I didn't do it because I was racist. I'm not evil, right? And that's because they don't know the history of blackface and how white people would put it on and then lynch black people, etc. But you can't blame them if they don't know, right?
Yeah.
So my point is, and Ben Shapiro, Ann Coulter, Charlie Kirk going on college campuses, every time I defended them, okay? So I believe in free speech completely. Now, having said that, nothing's complete, as you pointed out earlier. There's always some form of censorship. So where do I draw the line? I draw the line at verifiable but extreme hate speech, okay? So hate speech isn't, I don't like the current right-wing government of Israel. No, that's a policy position, okay?
I will say, I think it's totally fine that Megyn Kelly left her, got fired. I think that's a fine thing to fire someone over. I think that it should have been followed up with, like, a special, conversation between, like, I don't know, a conservative and Al Roker or something on that topic, but like, yeah, I'm okay with people who are, spouting minstrel show rhetoric. I'm okay with them losing their position at a high paying like mouthpiece for conservative ideas. I'm okay with that, actually.
And hate speech isn't I think black people committed more crime in this country than white people. Now, I could break down why I think the context of that is wrong, right? But that's not hate speech. You're trying to have a policy discussion, and maybe you're having it in the wrong direction, but I wouldn't call that anywhere near hate speech, right? So, but if you're going around saying we have to eradicate the Jews, no,
What-
that's Nazis.
What,
Sorry.
What about from the river to the sea?
No, that's too vague. A lot of people could mean different things by from. I hate this term "from the river to the sea," but different people mean different things by that.
So what? And then I suppose you can cut away the nuance. We had that video out of Cooper Union. I don't know if you saw, where the students are banging on the doors with the Jewish students in the room, screaming "from the river to the sea." I think that context is more clear then.
So I look. That's 100% wrong. And so I think it was Riley Gaines who had given a speech about how trans women shouldn't be allowed to compete in female sports, and she was in a college campus somewhere. I think it was in the Northwest too, but I forget. And she was scared.
They surrounded the room.
And they surrounded the room, and the cops were scared and didn't want to take her out of the room.
Is that terrorism?
So no, it's too far to call it terrorism. But is it a crime? Maybe. Like, now we're going too far, guys. And so for me, and so it gets nuanced, and this is difficult because people like to take those things and then go to extremes. So one extreme is,
I gotta be honest. The Riley Gaines like protest where she got trapped in a room for like 4 hours, that wasn't a good look. It wasn't optically a good protest. I think yeah, the best course of action would have been to let her go. But like, yeah, no, that one was not a win for progressive left by any means. Also, fuck Riley Gaines.
then the Ron DeSantis extreme, where, okay, that's it. We're going to ban all people showing any kind of support to, rhetorical support to Hamas or to Palestinians or whatever. And the mainstream media shuts out both right-wing and left-wing opinions by going, these are not acceptable thought. But when you have someone captured in a room where they fear for their safety and cannot leave, you have gone too far, okay?
I'd call it terrorism.
No, it's too much to call it terrorism because, look, then you take away the power of the word, okay? So nobody got killed. Nobody even got assaulted. But at the same time, I'm not excusing it. I'm saying it might even be a crime. But when you call it terrorism, it lessens the actual terrorism that Hamas does or right-wingers here in America do.
I think this is just more of a semantic argument then, and we're
it's a
defining the word
semantic
differently. My understanding of terrorism is the use of fear, like threatening violence or harm, in order to pursue a political goal.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that. So then let me ask you this. This morning, McKay Coppins revealed another part of the book about Mitt Romney, where Mitt Romney said that most of the Republicans that did not vote to impeach or convict Donald Trump, especially after January 6th, were because they were physically worried about their safety. They thought that right-wing supporters of Donald Trump might kill them or their family members.
Not terrorism.
Oh, come on, Tim, you just said it was terrorism.
No, I didn't. You want me to explain? I'll explain.
Okay, go ahead. I can't wait for this one.
If a bunch of Trump supporters went to their offices throwing bricks or wielding bricks and Molotovs, terrorism.
Yeah,
if a guy says
January 6th?
Absolutely.
Where they is chanted, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike
but
Pence.
we're referring...
So that's January 6th, definitely terrorism.
Specific people
according to your
6th.
standards, by the way. I'm not
Absolutely. Specific people on January 6th.
Good night, Discord
but
and
that's
Vol.
a whole very nuanced conversation. And the issue with January...
Whenever it comes to the right wing, we get more nuance. But okay, go ahead.
Well, we're being nuanced with the left. I'm not saying that leftists who are privately saying, you know, they want...
Well, then Tim, who in that crowd, you gave the Riley Gaines example, who in that crowd would you convict of terrorism? You know, you're saying only specific people in the January 6th crowd would be guilty of terrorism. Who specifically in the Riley Gaines do you think would be would be terrorist, and who's simply just caught up in the moment,
to eat the rich or whatever, committing acts of terrorism. If someone on the left says, I'm scared of people on the right doing something at some point, it's vague and nebulous. I'm scared of people coming here, not for political reasons.
But it's not vague and nebulous, Tim. First, January 6th already happened in talking about what Mitt Romney said. And
Cenk
so
has
that's in the minds
been
of the Republicans. And
Cenk has been pretty milquetoast so far. He hasn't been particularly interesting. He's just kind of been meh.
Just relaying what his colleagues told him. Okay.
But I don't want.
And then secondly, people confronted like Lindsey Graham at the airport, and he got really shook by that.
But that's not terrorism. If a crowd of people surrounds a room, banging on the door, screaming something related to killing you, that is blunt, low-level terrorism.
So wait. Okay, now your nuance is getting tricky, because you're saying when right-wingers yell at people and surround them, that's not terrorism. But when the left wing does it, because they didn't say they were going to kill them in the left-wing scenarios, they surrounded the room and yelled at them, and that is terrorism? That doesn't make sense.
Well, so you're talking about people confronting a guy in an airport?
So, to me, confronting people is perfectly fine.
Agreed.
Okay.
Surrounding a room and barring someone into it while screaming things is not.
It's not, because
there's a line somewhere.
Yeah, and the reason why I say it might be a crime is because then they don't have freedom of movement. So false arrest is almost certainly the wrong crime, but something where you're
limiting distinction. What I'm saying.
Yeah, you're limiting somebody's freedom. But Tim, if you think that the right-wing guys are not physically threatening these congressmen and others, you're crazy.
I'm saying
right?
a guy.
No, they very much physically threaten them.
I'm not talking. I'm talking about if there's a guy in Congress surrounded by all of his guards, there's no active threats or anything, and he goes, "I better not vote this way because someone's going to get mad." Well, that's not terrorism.
I totally agree. That's not terrorism.
Right. But if people are screaming, they're screaming things at you, making demands of you, and there are acts of violence, people.
Tim is an idiot. This is the extent of my witty commentary. Yeah.
So if right wingers, my sense of it.
One of my least favorite things about Tim Pool is he does have this tendency to just circle the drain around semantics. It's very uninteresting to me. And I feel like that's kind of where we've come so far in this interview, and it's just not super interesting. If it doesn't get a bit more interesting in like the next 5-ish to 10-ish minutes, we're gonna move on to something else.
Talked about the bubbles earlier, right? The right wingers are in their bubble and never see the right wing attacking them. Why would they? Because they're right wingers. So you don't get to experience what we experienced. And for a brief moment there around January 6th, even the Republican congressman got to experience what the left wing experiences.
Well,
so what the left wing experiences is right wingers threatening to kill us 24/7. Now that's not all right wingers. We're fair. We're reasonable. It's not the majority of right wingers. But is there a crazed percentage of right wingers in this country constantly threatening to murder the left-wingers, Democrats, and now Republican congressmen? Yes.
Completely agree.
Yeah. And so every left-winger...
We see it too, though.
Every left-winger in media, but only a couple of the Congress people, which is amazing, because when it happens to them, they flip out. And I'm like, oh, wow. Apparently that doesn't happen to them every day. But for people in left-wing media, our death threats from the right wing are nonstop.
When I was at Occupy Wall Street, in support of the activists, to the degree of getting the information out, rejecting the arbitrary police restrictions. Do you know who physically attacked me? It wasn't right wingers. It was the far left. It was we called them black bloc anarchists at the time. People call them Antifa now. I mean, it's like a vague term for groups of left-wing ideologues who dress up and attack people.
Is it a vague term? Because it literally means anti-fascist.
I know that if I go to if we have people on the show who rag on Trump, the responses we get are, "You are wrong." If we go to places and we challenge the left, we get threats of violence and death.
No, not death. But
we do. We were swatted.
I'm against it.
I was swatted 15 times last year. We had.
Oh, you were?
We were swatted 15 times.
Yeah, I saw that you were swatted at least once, and I said on air, I
bomb
hate
threats.
that. I despise that.
Spies, infiltrators. I mean, the degree of threats that we got were insane.
He got spies and infiltrators? What is he taught? Citations, Tim? What does that even mean? What does someone spying on you even mean? Like, tell the story here.
Yeah. So look, there is a strand of that on the extreme left, and it's always been around in the extreme left, but it got so muted. It's now back to rising up. It's bubbling up, and I'm worried about it. Whether it's tankies or whoever they are. I don't really like the Antifa thing. You guys hyped up so much, and then they never arrived.
What do you mean? They did.
There was barely any Antifa. Meanwhile, there's like right-wing militias everywhere.
Well, our
and
right-wing...
there's like 2 Antifa dudes in Portland.
Yep.
But there are extreme left, and they are getting more extreme.
How many people
now?
How many people died in the occupation in Seattle?
I don't know.
I think 3.
I wouldn't doubt that.
It's particularly disconcerting when far leftists with rifles take over several city blocks.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
And they unloaded 300 rounds into an SUV with 2 teenagers in it. I don't know if they both died. There were, I think, maybe potentially 3.
Well, wait a minute. I don't think that's how this story went, actually. I don't think this is that. I don't think he thinks he needs a citation on this one, friendos. I think he might be incorrect, actually. I don't think Antifa took over a square block or so of Portland and then unloaded 300 bullets into a car. Now, I do know that during the takeover of that area, some people did die as a direct result of cops deciding not to go there. I believe that is the case. I don't think it was armed people on rooftops, like, sniping at SUVs.
3 deaths specifically there. But it's like, hey, that's what we're talking about. That happened, you know?
So that
Chaz.
happened.
It was
And
called
that's what I mean right
Chaz.
now.
The George Floyd occupation as well in Minneapolis. You also had shootings. There's a video of a car driving through and they're unloading rounds into that car. So
there's a
bad
difference. There's so many nuances here, and I say both.
Fun fact: I live in Minneapolis. A lot of the shooting that you see in videos, a lot of that, and not all of it, but a lot of it came from outside agitators from like out of state or the suburbs coming in with guns to counter protest BLM. Fun stuff. Kind of like how the police station got burned down. And then it turned out much later that the people who started that fire were Boogaloo Boys. Wild stuff, man.
About the right and the left. So in the case of the George Floyd issues, the riots are different than the occupations, right? So the riots are great frustration. But then after the riots is the looting, and the looting is not frustration, that's just stealing, okay? And then the occupations are not the...
Well, the looting is just stealing, but you have to look at the underlying reason for why people feel compelled to steal. It's generally due to like poor economic conditions.
Rioting, they're usually white people, okay?
Yep.
And
white liberals
who are like zany extremists. And so if you're on the left and you think we're talking about you, no, we're not talking about you. We're talking about the guys who say that there should be no laws within this city block or within these X city blocks. And whenever you have no laws, you know what happens? Chaos.
The most brutal people take over.
Yeah, every time. And by the way, why do you think Hamas took over took over Gaza? Because when people are desperate and times are tough, extremists win.
Do you know how many?
And also, they're a violent group who kill opposition and also were directly funded by the Israeli government and Benjamin Netanyahu. That's crazy. Crazy how that works, huh?
How many people died in the George Floyd riots?
I don't.
There's different estimates. The original estimates was around 34 to 36. I think it's been amended now based on people making arguments about what constitutes a death during the riot versus someone died while the riot was happening. But it's between like 20 and 30. So when you have nationwide mass protests over what I would say is arguably serious disinformation coming out of what happened with George Floyd, people fear
It's
terrorism.
not disinformation, brother. I mean, we all saw it.
Well, no, we need to clarify what I mean by disinformation. I'm
Okay,
not
yeah.
saying. So obviously, the dude Chauvin put his knee on the guy's neck, and this general area is like covering a large portion of his back. But the disinformation comes around the circumstances that resulted in that, the moral questions of what should be done, how it should be done, and the fact that what did happen doesn't warrant 30 plus more deaths and mass rioting across the country, which destroys more lives and burns down innocent people's buildings and homes.
So, look, first of all, Chauvin killed George Floyd. He did it in a brutal way. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about that at all.
Have you
at
read
all.
the coroner's report?
Yeah, and
Do you know
what happens,
do you know what it
Tim,
said?
is that sometimes people die because they can't breathe because you cut off the flow of oxygen, and sometimes they die and they say they can't breathe. It's because they have a heart condition or some other condition, and when you compress long enough, they literally have the feeling that they can't breathe, and then they die.
I don't disagree. My point more so is, are you familiar with the circumstances before George Floyd's death? Like what led to him being apprehended in the first place?
I think he had like a fake $20 bill for which he was apparently. Then you shouldn't murder people over.
But he was
$20.
behind the wheel of a car chewing on a speedball, which is methamphetamine and fentanyl.
Okay, but Tim, what effing difference does it make?
The question is, should the police? And I'm not telling you what you should believe. I'm asking you genuinely. Should the police remove a driver from a vehicle who's behind the wheel who is chewing on a speedball?
Yeah, the police have to use force to some degree. I get it. So there's a homeless guy down the street from me in LA who carries around a spear. All right. so I'm not in the crazy leftist camp who's like, hey, that's his freedom. Okay.
No, right.
So the cops at some point have to.
I do love, and by love I mean I absolutely hate that people like Tim Pool keep bringing up George Floyd was high. Well, okay, motherfucker. Let someone you don't like how about you let someone who hates you kneel on your neck for 11 minutes? How about you try that? You know, like none of this Steven Crowder like, oh, your employees are on your neck. Now find somebody who genuinely hates you to like put their knee on your neck for 11 minutes. Let's see how that goes. Oh, well, he died because he was high. No, he died because he was suffocated for 11 minutes in an illegal hold. Like,
take the spear away. Lady down the street has a machete.
which, by the way, is reflected in his coroner report.
Okay.
Did you?
So, but that doesn't mean that I want the cops to come and kill the guy.
Well,
with the spear.
of course. But did you watch the full body camera footage from start to finish of how it all went down?
I believe I did in that case.
It's a moral dilemma, and I think
it's not at all a moral dilemma.
No,
it absolutely is.
So, Tim, you could drag him out of the car. You can't sit on his neck for 9 minutes, brother. That's obvious.
I agree. I completely agree.
Don't fight that. That's terrible. It's murder.
I'm not saying that specific incident is the moral dilemma. I'm saying the entirety of the circumstance brings us to a bunch of serious questions that must be answered that have not been.
No, I think it's look, I'll tell you, Tim, to the average guy, it sounds like you're excusing it. I know you're saying you're not because you're putting in the caveat that the 9 minutes was wrong and it was murder, but like, don't get into it, because if you want to talk about nuance, there's 1,000 cop videos where they drag him out of the car and you could say, no, that's totally okay. That guy's on speed. He was speedy, like he was causing
Catalina Gearbox, why on earth would they rely on the experts at the actual trial when they could just make things up themselves?
Significant issue where people might have gotten hurt and the cops had to subdue him. So make the argument in that case. If you make it about George Floyd, everybody's going to think you're defending this racist guy who murdered that guy.
I don't care what people think about me if I'm trying to find a solution so this doesn't happen again. And so if the issue is guy uses counterfeit $20 bill resulting in a police call. Police find him behind the wheel of an SUV chewing on hard drugs. He's removed from the vehicle. He sat down. Eventually they move to arrest him. George Floyd becomes combative, says, take me out of the car, take me out of the car. I can't breathe. Put me on the ground, put me on the ground, put me on the ground. Chauvin arrives after this, kneels on his neck. Those are the circumstances of what happened. Crowd forms. They're mad at it. George Floyd dies. 9 minutes. The questions are, where was the point at which this should have stopped? Should it have just?
Why is that not super easy? The point it should have stopped is he should never put his knee on the guy's neck.
They have
yeah. like the point at which it stops should be when he's on the ground in cuffs, like struggling to breathe. Like that's when. Yeah. Hell, you could even like sit him up on the curb. Like where's he gonna go when he's handcuffed?
Training for it. And so then,
well, that's the training is wrong.
Exactly. And then the answer becomes, we dissect this. We say, okay, here's the point of failure. And so when you, the problem is when you outright dismiss it and say you're racist, if you question it, you're siding with the racist guy. If people want to say that, that's fine. I don't care. It doesn't solve the problem.
But Tim, you're purposely picking the worst case to talk about because it gets like my honest opinion. Sorry, but it's because you know that it's going to get more attention if you say it in the context of George Floyd.
Let's talk about Ahmaud Arbery.
Okay.
I mean, these are the high-profile stories that
Ahmaud Arbery, the guy who got shot jogging in the neighborhood, is.
I think jogging is a representation of your misinformation or your ignorance of the issue.
Tim,
this
is why people think you're a radical right winger.
That's fine, but if you don't know, why would you make the argument?
So what do you mean I don't know? I know the case. The guy, the two redneck racist sons of bitches who murdered him, said that he was in the house that was being built. Which, by the way, apparently tons of people had come.
Yeah, no, Ahmaud Arbery was like out for a jog, and two guys basically pulled up and lynched him. Like in cold blood. Like they made efforts to like block him in and then killed him.
To see, hey, how's the construction going? Right. So do they know that he was one of the how's the construction going? Well, they don't know anything because he didn't steal anything.
But
okay?
you're wrong.
So, but they see a black guy at a construction site,
Cenk,
and they're like, let's chase that son of a bitch down and shoot him.
I don't care what people think of me if I'm following the facts to try and figure out what happened and try and solve the problem. But you have already shown you don't know the case.
Yeah, that's total horse crap. Go ahead, defend the racist guys who murdered him. Go ahead.
How about I just describe what happened?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So a few weeks before the incident, a gun is stolen.
So, but not by that guy. But hey, the racist thought it must be the black guy.
How about the police then show a picture of him to various people in the neighborhood saying, this is our suspect of the burglaries that have been happening over the past several weeks?
Except it wasn't, right?
No,
Ahmaud Arbery didn't do anything
Arbery was
wrong.
the suspect.
I never saw that, and that's
my point. You didn't.
Okay, so I don't believe you. B, I never saw it. C, there's.
But you see the problem of
no.
You didn't follow the case. Okay, I'm not making a moralistic statement on what
Tim.
happened.
So let's take your bullshit facts, so-called facts. Let's accept them as true, okay? So they show me a picture. Please come by my house. They show me a picture of a black guy, and they say this might be a suspect in a robbery. If I see him, I'm not going to chase him down with a gun because that means that there's a high chance that we're going to get into a conflict and someone's going to die. That's a lunatic thing to do.
Why did the guy who filmed it go to jail?
Second thing I'm not going to do is look at any black guy in the neighborhood and go, I bet that's him, man. Let's go grab our shotguns.
But I don't disagree.
Okay.
Why did the guy who filmed it go to prison?
I think that what they stated in that case was that he helped to chase the guy down. It wasn't the filming that was the issue. It was that he helped to corner the guy in his car as well, and that's why he was an accomplice.
So he didn't coordinate with him anyway. He saw the McMichaels chase after him, and so he said, I got to film this. He then gave the footage out, which showed what happened and resulted in the criminal charges, but they locked him up too.
But he was an accomplice, brother. So I read the stories about how he worked with
those
guys.
It doesn't even matter if he didn't know them. If he used his car to box in the Ahmaud Arbery, then he's an accomplice. It doesn't matter if they were associates beforehand, but I believe that they were.
Guys, he agreed with those guys.
He's a neighbor.
So if he was just a random neighbor that shot it out of his window.
Just taking a look real quick here. Last year, the McMichaels and Bryan were found guilty on all counts in the federal trial. All three men were found guilty of using force and threats of force to intimidate and interfere with Arbery's right to use a public street because of his race. All three men were found guilty of attempted kidnapping. Travis McMichael was found guilty of using, carrying, brandishing, and firing a gun during a crime of violence. Greg McMichael was found guilty of using, carrying, and brandishing a gun during a crime of violence. Yeah. And in 2021, Let's see. William Roddy Bryan was found guilty of 3 counts of felony murder, 1 count of aggravated assault with a pickup truck, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit a felony false imprisonment. He's found not guilty of malice murder, not guilty of 1 count of felony murder, and not guilty of 1 count of aggravated assault with a firearm. So, yeah.
Why would he go to
Good
prison?
night, very
of course
night,
he
Duck.
shouldn't go to prison.
But
right?
that's the point. He didn't coordinate with them in any way.
So yet now you're nitpicking the prosecution in that particular case about the guy.
So is Cenk silly or bad? Silly, but he's on the right track on this part.
Who shot the video? But why are
Hey,
you
Zelrex.
like going out of your way to defend the most racist murderers in America? Then you shouldn't wonder why people think you're an extreme right winger, Tim. I'm keeping it real with you.
I don't know who these guys are. I don't know anything about
You don't think that they're racist when they just chase down a black guy in the neighborhood and pull a shotgun on him?
You see,
he's not even armed, and then they murder him in cold blood, and you don't think that's racist?
You see,
what is your line for racism then?
Okay, if there's a suspect in a crime, and the police say, this is who we think he is, then you believe this man may have actually stolen the gun out of my truck. He may be armed. The police told the McMichaels not to pursue.
You
They
have
should
made
not have.
8 logical jumps there.
Like what? Like what?
There was the guy who was in the neighborhood. The cops showed me a black guy's picture. Then maybe he took something out of my car. Now I'm like way out in
Well,
maybe
hold on,
land.
you're making a mistake.
And
I'm
then,
not- I'm
here
not-
comes a black guy in their neighborhood. Maybe he was the guy, but maybe my truck, and maybe let's go chase him down with a shotgun.
I didn't say they
Did
were
I
right to do it.
chase down anybody else in the neighborhood with a shotgun?
Then why are you defending this entire scenario, bud? Like, I didn't say they were right to do it. Then what are we doing here? Why are we talking about this?
Oh, look, there's a black guy. Let's go chase him down.
I didn't say they were right to do it.
Okay. All right. Then why are you bothering defending
Yeah.
them? I don't get it.
You've taken this-
Unless you're trying to get attention of all the right wingers who go, oh, that
You see,
wasn't
this-
so bad, was
this
it?
is-
Hey, Tim Pool's defending us.
Do you remember the Covington Catholic kids?
Remind
The
me.
kid on the steps of the Lincoln.
Yeah.
And
they
Native
knew
Amer-
when he caught the feelings and sued everybody and cried like a baby.
And
Yeah.
how many people accused that kid of wrongdoing when it turns out he was actually confronted by Nathan Phillips and not the other way around?
We never made that mistake. And if you get something wrong, you just say it.
I'm not going
because
to give
facts matter, right?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the case like Ahmaud Arbery or many of these others, or Breonna Taylor, I'm not going to start making declarative statements about the personal opinions of people I've never met and don't know anything about. I'm going to try and understand what the argument from the prosecution was.
They were literally found guilty of like in a federal court, Tim. They were found guilty of like racially motivated crimes. Like what are you talking about, dude?
And guess what? The prosecution did not dispute that Ahmaud Arbery was a suspect in the felony burglaries. The prosecution argued that
I don't care.
Well, that's the point.
No,
I
but
care
Tim,
about
and I'll
justice.
tell you why I don't care. So it's not just like I'm being flippant, right? It's because every time a black man is killed by either authorities or vigilantes, in the Ahmaud Arbery case, what right wingers do is, did you know that back in 7th grade he was once tardy, and we heard that in 8th grade he was smoking marijuana. He was evil and had it coming. Did you
But I'm
know
not doing
George
that.
Floyd might have stolen $20 whole? Oh my God, these black people, they're so evil. Did you know that Trayvon Martin?
I do have to say, this is a strategy that Tim Pool has clearly no defense for. Just can we back up just like a second?
These black people, they're so evil.
Like he just genuinely doesn't know how to respond. Like there's like a little eye flick in there.
Did you know that Trayvon Martin?
Here.
Oh my God, these black people, they're so evil. Did you know that Trayvon?
Just like a little eye flick. Like what do I do? What do we do?
Trayvon Martin, it was caught
I'm
in
not
school, maybe smoking pot, and that's why Zimmerman had to murder him in cold blood. He had it coming. He had it coming.
So I can understand if conservatives and right wingers have done that, and so you're just frustrated and don't want to hear it. But I'm not doing that.
it's in the Ahmaud Arbery case and the George Floyd case, you're taking the most extreme cases with the most clear racism, with the most clear murders,
with clear convictions on them,
and you're trying to nuance it. And what I'm telling you, Tim, and what has made me uncomfortable in the past about you, which is what I was trying to get past, is that attracts a huge right-wing audience because they want somebody to excuse the death of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. And when you seem to excuse it with your nuance, then they go, yes!
I don't care.
Cenk fucked up there. Because you understand how right-wingers are going to interpret this, right? Like, would you step in with your nuance? Like, every right-winger just was like, I see. Cenk is upset because of how nuanced Tim Pool is. Like, oh man, Cenk was doing really well.
Finally, somebody's sticking up for white people killing black people. Come on, don't tell me there aren't people in your audience that think that. There's tons of people who think that.
So I'll give you another example. You were critical of me over my statements about January 6th, which I believe you took out of context.
Okay, go ahead.
So I made the point that trespass charges require an initial warning to anybody who's going to be charged. Right? You can't allow someone to enter a public building.
But then if you just look at a right winger the wrong way, they can blast you with their shotgun. You think that the guys all the guys who are stand your ground. So I'm standing my ground, man. Are they giving warnings? They never give warnings. They just blast away.
In West Virginia, you cannot just shoot and kill a person.
I know, but you can in a lot of states.
No, you can't.
In Florida, you have the
you absolutely can. Like castle doctrine laws. Like if someone is on your property, you can blast the fuck out of them. Okay.
Easiest excuse will give you stand your ground.
But the excuse has to be fear of bodily harm. It's not just someone trespassed, right? So my point was January 6th.
Yeah, but again, establishing fear of bodily harm is just saying, yes, I feared for my life. I was so scared. I was so afraid that they would hurt me that I had to fire.
Was this. My statement was, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there's videos of police opening the doors for people, letting them in and taking selfies.
Yeah, right-wing cops who are like, yeah, go get them, guys.
Absolutely. And my argument was, there's different entrances to the building. The people who are violent and rioting should be charged. They will be charged, and they should go to jail. To what degree? I mean, there's a debate on the time frame. I mean, 20 years is probably a bit excessive. On the other side of the building, there's a video of the police opening the doors to a calm group of people walking in and waving to the cops who say explicitly, I don't agree with it, but I support it. I support your right to it, or something to that effect. And I said, those people are going to get acquitted because you can't allow someone into a building to claim it's trespassing.
Okay.
You made the argument that Tim Pool said they're stepping over broken glass and didn't know they were trespassing. I didn't. And it turns out I was correct. Several of these people have already been totally acquitted or partially acquitted due to this fact.
Okay, so again, Tim, like January 6th is different than the two cases we were talking about. January 6th, I think, is way more complicated, and I might surprise you with some of my opinions on that in a second. But if I got your description of that wrong, then my bad. Okay, and so like but again, you're like, no, that one's too complicated. You're allowed. There's plenty of nuance there, right? And so if you're saying those particular guys should be acquitted because they were actually let into the building, I agree with you.
The cops should be charged.
Yeah. And so, although it's hilarious that there are some right-wingers, and again, whenever I say right-wingers, guys, don't catch feelings. It doesn't necessarily mean you. I don't mean just you, Tim. I mean the audience, right? It could mean that there are other people in the right wing who feel that way. Well, I'm a left-winger, and I've told you 100 times about extreme left-wingers I don't agree with, okay? So in the case of the right wing being absurd on January 6th is right-wing cops let the guys into the building, and then the right wing goes...
I was just giving an example of like a legal like protection that like allows you to kill somebody. I wasn't saying castle doctrine is bad. Just saying that like there are legal protections for killing people. Like just like Frank from Always Sunny just started blasting like There are plenty of legal protections for that in America. In fact, I think one. Do you guys remember there was that there were like 2 cases relatively recently of like teenagers or college kids like driving into the wilderness and then like driving up towards like a house because they got turned around, and then like the guy from that house like popped out and just blasted them and killed some of these people. Like it's a thing that happens. Or like, you know, a black kid pulls into the wrong driveway and just gets blasted by like an elderly white man. Like that's a thing that happens. That's all I'm trying to point out.
And the right wingers go deep state left wingers. No, guys.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
It's
not
nonsense.
deep state.
Yeah,
left
the-
wing.
a
It's just the
symbolic
right-wing
symbol.
cop letting
That's one of the
right-wing
ones I was thinking about.
protesters in.
And people were saying they're Antifa because they're wearing hoodies, and I'm like, those are just right-wing guys wearing hoodies.
Yeah, it's just right-wing guys wearing hoodies. Okay.
Oh, but when it comes to these other stories, you get very angry.
Let me do the nuance on January 6th. So, and it relates to the George Floyd riots. So, you know, Martin Luther King famously said riots are the voice of the unheard, right? And I think that that's definitely true in what happened after George Floyd, but I also think that there's some truth to that when it comes to January 6th, which you'll never hear anybody on the left wing say, okay? And so I'm not 1% excusing the hang Mike Pence chants, and I think those guys are super dangerous, and I've talked about it before, I'll talk about it 2,000 times after. But for a lot of the right wing, so first of all, the guys on the ground they did not, other than the leaders, they did not know that they were a plot to overthrow the American government. I think.
I mean, like Gamergy, real talk. Some people in rural areas take trespassers will be shot as just like essentially biblical law. You know. Good night, Gamergy.
And I'll explain why. But they didn't know that.
You think there was a plot to overthrow them?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And so we'll get into that in a sec. But the guys on the ground didn't know that. They're just fodder. Okay. And so they're super frustrated. So here's what the establishment and the Democrats don't understand about that frustration. It's because you guys keep lying to them, the mainstream media does, and keeps telling them, no, these politicians are honorable people and they're having legitimate debates. And let's find out what Lindsey Graham's opinion is. And let's find out what Joe Manchin's opinion is. Their opinion is, who wrote me the biggest check? Okay. So since mainstream media lies about that 24/7, and the average right-winger has the same problems as the average left-winger and the average independent in the country, which is that our wages are too low, corporate power is run amok, big business in cahoots with big government is crushing our lives. So their voice is unheard, and so they're in a rage. Now, Trump then takes their rage and misdirects it. But I understand the rage, and I understand that sometimes riots happen when your voice is unheard, both on the left, the right, the white, and black. So I'm incredibly consistent on that. Now, why do I think there was an actual coup attempt? Because the coup is not the riot. It's not like they were going to take the Capitol and keep it, and then we were all going to be like, oh, I guess the right wing has it now.
Once you're in the building, you have the power. That's
right. I guess the Oath Keepers are now is the Secretary of State, the Proud Boy guys, the Treasury Secretary. No. But here was their role that they didn't know they were playing. So guys like Peter Navarro wrote a book about it. Steve Bannon brags about it all the time. Eastman, Cheeseborough, all those guys who are charged now in Atlanta wrote memos about it. One of the memos was called the Fraudulent Elector Memo. And so the plan was, we get a bunch of fake, and Sidney Powell accidentally admitted all the way back in November on Lou Dobbs' show. The plan is you get a bunch of, now they wouldn't say fake electors, they would say Trump electors, but they're not even technically the Trump electors, because you have a slate of electors for both candidates, right? But the slate of electors for Trump would not go along with the coup attempt. So they had to find new random Republicans in the swing states, and they even did it in New Mexico, which was not even close, right? And these were the fake electors. And so the plan was delay the proceedings so that they cannot certify the vote. Plan A was have Pence say, I'm not certifying the vote. But Pence wouldn't do the unconstitutional thing, and he deserves enormous credit for that. And he nearly got murdered for that, okay? I mean, that is a Republican that had significant courage. And I don't think he's ever really gotten the credit he deserves for that. Now, you could disagree with Pence on everything else, and I do, right? But I give him credit where credit is due. So he was supposed to delay the proceedings. He refuses to do it. Trump is in a rage. Instead, they get the guys to bum rush the building so that it delays the proceedings. The next part of that plan was then the Republicans are supposed to go in and go, well, I can't tell who won. There's no certification. We're going to bring it back to the states. And then at that point, the swing states had Republican legislatures. And so the Republicans in the legislatures were supposed to go, we now install the fake electors, okay? And that's a coup attempt, knowing that you lost the goddamn election.
It's actually simpler than that. They don't need to go to the state legislatures. It would be the House delegations.
No, that's the last part of the steps. When the state legislatures say that Trump won when they know he didn't win, by the way, more credit to Republicans in a second. When they say he didn't win, they say he won when he didn't. It then goes back to the House because then it becomes an open question, a political question that the House has to decide. And the House, even though there was more Democrats at the time.
Again, this is the Cenk I'm familiar with. Like, he's doing a good job breaking all of this down. And like, yeah, like he knows his shit on this. It's just like so much of the earlier stuff in this video has been like just wild nonsense.
Time they vote by state, and the Republicans had more states.
Yes.
So it was actually, if you're going to do a coup, it is a logical coup plan. And they discussed other coup plans. Michael Flynn proposed rolling out the tanks and doing martial law. They had a 3-hour conversation about it. Now let me give credit to courageous Republicans, even Trump administration guys who I despise. Everyone, the reason Trump didn't roll out the tanks is because everyone in his administration that was in the room said, we will all resign immediately if you roll out tanks against the American people. Okay, so credit to those Trump administration people. And then the state legislatures filled with what I think are radical right-wingers. The great majority of them said, no, we're not going to do the fake electors. And they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Are you familiar with Texas v. Pennsylvania? It was the original jurisdiction lawsuit between Texas and Pennsylvania, arguing that several states violated the Constitution by altering the rules of the election, not at the legislative level, but through the judiciary and the executive branches. And so Texas's argument was, if Pennsylvania is acting in violation of the Constitution, it's subverting our vote in this process, and we want the Supreme Court to rule on this.
Okay, and how did it turn out for them?
The Supreme Court refused to even hear the case.
Yeah.
So this is a problem. This is what actually ignites fervor and gets.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Norwegian, he thought like he could play nice with Tim and that would pan out, and I think it took him about an hour to realize he can't do that.
Expands the conflict. Thomas and Alito agreed that when a state has a dispute with another state, as per the Constitution, original jurisdiction means they must hear it. But the other justices just said, no, we won't. And so what ends up happening is the case expanded to include, I think, 48 states with like 24 versus 24, whatever, or it was like 23, 25, where half the states were saying, you know, we've got 5 or 6 states that have altered the rules of the election, but the Constitution explicitly states the legislation must handle how the elections are handled. So if a governor changes the rules or a judiciary rules on it, it's not gone to the legislature yet. The legislative branch must then, like, they have to vote on it.
So, Tim, you know, they can bring that suit. There's no problem with that.
They were all thrown out.
Okay,
so
hold on.
my point is this. My point is this.
Go ahead.
If you've got people who are saying, how come the rules were changed in Pennsylvania? The lower court agreed that it violated the state constitution, but the higher court said, we're going to do it anyway. We believe it's acceptable. So then you have people across the country saying, whoa, 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 hold on. If we're all agreeing to vote in this process and this state's even disputing amongst themselves, we need this adjudicated. And they said, no. Then what do you get? The language of the unheard.
Yeah. So, Tim, there's 2 different things here.
Yeah, I'm sure January 6th was the language of the unheard over this obscure court case that nobody knows about or cares about or gives a single flying fuck about, except people who are interested in overthrowing the U.S. government.
So let's separate them out because it's really important. Did Trump actually win? That case was litigated over 60 times, and he presented him and his side allies presented 0 evidence.
How many of those cases were dismissed on standing versus merit?
A bunch of them, but a huge number of them decided it on the merits.
That's not true.
Oh, come on, Tim. Come on, Tim. And then in all the ones that
Ico rules. Thank you very much for the raid. I can't believe Tim Pool in 2023 is still doing election denial, dude. Like, how many of those cases were thrown out based on standing instead of merit? How many of them were thrown out? Well, okay. Where are the court cases that proved the election was stolen from Donald Trump? Tim, if you got the evidence, why don't you bring it to court? You know, you could be the hero who wins back the presidency for Donald Trump. Do it, Tim.
Decided on the merits. How come the Trump side never presented any evidence?
I guess it depends on the specific case.
No, it doesn't depend. They have no evidence.
If we're talking...
In one case, Rudy Giuliani had to admit, because he's a lawyer, he's going to get disbarred if he lies in court. And you could lie at a press conference 24/7,
Right.
but once you're inside court. And they said, Mr. Giuliani, do you have any evidence to show that the election was stolen? And he's like, no. Because they don't have any evidence. They're lying. They've been lying the whole time.
I agree the election was not stolen.
Okay.
Or it depends on how you define stolen, I guess, right?
Then why are you talking about how many of these court cases were thrown out on standing? This Weasley little waffling fuck.
Oh, that you could define it stolen in 1,000 ways that are BS.
But
it was not stolen.
Some
period.
people argue that Pennsylvania changing its voting laws in violation of the Constitution is stealing an election.
No, that's a nonsense. No, it's super.
Some people would argue that changing election laws in Pennsylvania was stealing the election. Yeah, those people would be nincompoops, Tim. They would be intellectual failures. They would be people who are either so bankrupt when it comes to the ridges of their brains, or people who are so enriched by the coffers of billionaire zealots that they're willing to say such inane things.
Super important. It's super important because I don't want the
frog
right wing
foibles.
thinking that it was like, oh, fraudulent
Aragonian
election
bum.
and Hugo Chavez or the ghost of Hugo Chavez and a kraken and a mule went in and changed the votes. No one changed the votes, period. And so because Trump and Fox News and Newsmax lie about it 24/7, and Fox News had to pay $800 million for their lies, people think that the election was stolen when it wasn't. You know what election was stolen? And then I'll tell you the reaction that happened instead when it happened in the left wing. 2000, brazenly stolen from Al Gore. So let me explain the details and then I'll relate it back to today, okay? So Al Gore not only won the popular vote, and nobody disputes that, but after the case was over and the election was over, all the news organizations went in and did a recount of the entire state of Florida. And under every kind of way of counting, Al Gore won the state of Florida. So he got flat out robbed. He won the Electoral College as well. But the Supreme Court in that case said, no, I don't care what Florida law is. I don't care that we've been making an argument for states' rights our whole lives. That liar Scalia, that piece of crap hypocrite, was like, yeah, did I say states' rights for decades? I mean, screw states' rights. You know what I'm saying? States don't have any goddamn rights. And they ordered Florida to stop the recount. They said, we don't want to know who won, because then we might find out Al Gore won. We don't want Al Gore winning. We just want to steal this goddamn election and give it to our buddy George Bush. And they outright stole it, okay? Now, having said that, Supreme Court rules, the Supreme Court rules. We move on, okay? Nobody rioted. The Democrats haven't been crying about that, like, oh, no, Al Gore should have been the president. Al Gore is actually the current president, etc. They let it go. It was a great injustice. And we noted for the history books, and I noted as an example here, but we let it go. We didn't go around going, no, Al Gore's still the president, and losing the goddamn minds that I see with the right.
Matt Netanyahu, on a related note, I would play the hell out of a CRPG mod of Divinity Original Sin called Florida Original Sin. I would play the fuck out of that game. 10 out of 10 RPG. 10 out of 10.
But in 2016, they did.
No, they didn't. See, I'm glad you're bringing that up. See, that's another super important distinction because Hillary Clinton whined about losing the election in 2,000 ways. Oh, it was the Russians. It was my dog ate my homework.
Funded the Steele dossier.
Steele dossier. The Bernie Bros did it. Blah 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 blah. Because she didn't want to accept responsibility, and the establishment media didn't want to accept responsibility because they all loved Hillary Clinton. They all hated Bernie Sanders. They all hated Donald Trump. They hated anyone who wasn't the establishment.
Exactly,
Hillary Clinton is the
Spitfire.
epicenter of the establishment. So they couldn't live with the fact that they were preposterously wrong. You know what got under their skin the most? Me. Because I told them, hey, you idiots, Hillary Clinton's going to lose.
Go to Michigan.
Right? And Bernie Sanders has a 12-point lead on Donald Trump, you morons, right? And they're like, no, I think the establishment is correct. I think America loves the establishment.
But you know what it really was is that to them, Bernie and Trump are effectively the same thing.
Of course. Actually, they fear Bernie way more than they fear Trump.
Probably.
Yeah, and the reason is because Trump's full of crap. He's only in it for himself, whereas Bernie actually would change the system. And so when they know that Bernie would change the system, they're like, anything but Bernie. Shut his ass out. Don't give him any media coverage. Don't let him do debates. Put the debates up
Didn't
against
Hillary
the Super
run a
Bowl.
smear
Do
campaign
anything
against
you
Bernie?
can to make
Yep.
sure you silence Bernie. Oh, Trump, he could be allowed on TV all day long. Oh, let's have fun. Oh, what's the major proposal of Donald Trump back in 2016? Oh, a lot of shouting about the wall and immigrants, etc. But what's the only thing that Trump did? Giant tax cuts for the rich and for corporations.
Tim Pool's given Cenk multiple opportunities to talk about his book.
Establishment loved Trump up until that bill passed. I swear to God, you watch old Young Turks clips, and I say they're not going to turn on him until this giant tax cut for the rich passes.
Well, you know what really got him positive press? When he bombed Syria.
Yeah, and then he bombed Syria, and they're like, yes, right? So now
he's a president.
So yeah, they turn on him later when he does anti-establishment stuff, but he's not doing anti-establishment stuff for the
he tried
average
to play ball.
voter. Yeah, he tried to play ball. He loves stoners. He took his super PACs took $100 million from Sheldon Adelson twice.
Yeah,
Sheldon Adelson.
John Bolton.
Yeah,
he brings him in.
He brings in John Bolton, who's a warmonger. And
I thought for a second that Cenk was saying that Trump loves stoners. I was really confused, waiting for him to explain how Donald Trump has secretly been in the pocket of big weed for years. But donors makes a whole lot more sense.
Neocon. Sheldon Adelson owns casinos in Vegas, but he mainly owns casinos in Macau. You know that, like, so Trump did like half a dozen giant favors for him, but the biggest favor was, two biggest favors were, he basically dismissed corruption charges in China against him, and he allowed him to bring his money back from China. Instead of a 35%, he created a special rate of 8% for repatriating taxes from a foreign country. So a guy who, he's deceased now, but back then, a guy who had his main line of business in China had bought the U.S. president. He gave him $100 million 2 different times and totally bought him. And Donald Trump was 100% his bitch. His bitch so much that not only did he give him every single thing that he asked for, but he also
I do
made
remember
his
that,
wife,
Catalina
he gave him-
Gearbox.
that he gave her a presidential medal of honor. It's the highest honor America has, and he threw it in like a tchotchke. Like, oh yeah, if you act now, Sheldon, I'll also take your rando wife and give her a presidential medal, okay, of honor. And he's like, Sheldon's like, oh, I was gonna go 90 million, but I'll go the whole 100, okay? And so he purchased Donald Trump. He's just as corrupt as anyone else. He's just corrupt on his own behalf. But Bernie, he's not corrupt. So that's why the establishment's like, Trump we could deal with. What's Trump's new proposal now? Cut corporate taxes from 21 to 15. He's still blowing corporations to this day. Donald Trump has wanted to be part of the club for his whole life. He's a spoiled little kid. He never knew how to run his dad's money. He lost all his money. Everybody in New York laughed at him, and that made him so...
Honestly, when Cenk is talking about Trump, he sounds reasonable. You know, like he's doing a great job here. All of the rest of this has been terrible.
bitter. So he's just in it for himself.
Who do you think we'd be better off with today, Biden or Trump? You think Biden?
Oh, definitely Biden. I'll tell you why in a sec. But just to finish the earlier thought. So for all of Hillary Clinton's whining, she never said the election that there was fraud in the voting. that the election was stolen from me through the fraud in the voting, and it's an illegitimate election, and I should be
Russia
president.
manipulated the votes.
Yeah, but she didn't say I should be president. She didn't, and she didn't
said the
say
election was
no. She didn't say manipulate the votes themselves. She said manipulate the media.
She said it could be stolen from you.
Yeah, but
so she didn't say me, but we know what she means when she said it.
But Tim, did she ever say, "Hey, no, Trump didn't actually win the election.
Yes.
I'm the actual president"?
Well, she said it was
She
stolen from her.
never said that. She
said-
never, ever said that. I'm the actual president? No. Whereas that dumbass
she said it
Donald
was stolen
Trump
from you.
has been pretending he won this entire time. Hillary Clinton was bitter about the loss, but she never made the claim legally or otherwise. Hey, look, Tim, it's a super easy thing. First of all, you can look it up, right? And yeah, I know the line, guys.
Yeah.
But that doesn't say the election is fraudulent. I'm the actual president. Here's
We had a multi-year
here's an
investigation
analogy to
into it
that
being
line.
stolen.
So here's an analogy to that line, even though Bernie never said it, but his supporters said it. So the primary was in 2016 was quote unquote rigged against Bernie Sanders. Okay. Now, how was it rigged? Because it's very important. So it was rigged in that they did as few debates as possible. They put the debates on when people would least watch them. They tried to take the oxygen out of the room for Bernie. And then if you remember, we broke the story at Young Turks that Donna Brazil took questions and fed them to Hillary Clinton in the debates. And then a huge part of it was they did a money laundering operation where these huge Democratic donors would give to the states, and the state parties would then funnel it into Hillary Clinton's campaign. So if you say that election, that primary election was rigged in that way, okay, that's fair. Okay. But if you say the votes were actually messed with, and a lot of Bernie supporters at the time said that, and we at the Young Turks came out and said, no, guys,
superdelegates.
You don't have any. No, superdelegates is a different conversation.
No, I know, but it's rigged against Bernie.
But guys, understand how the mainstream media rigs things, because they rig things against the left and the right. Okay, so it's important that you understand how they do it.
Guys, I don't know that I have another hour of this in me. I got to be 100% with you guys. I do not know that I have another hour of Cenk and Tim Pool in me. We've already gone through an hour and 40 minutes. I don't know that I have another hour left. It's a lot. Maybe just finish this topic. Okay, we'll finish this topic. We'll ride this rail until the end. Then we will hop off, and we'll do our Gaza update. What's going on in Gaza? I thought we'd be near the end by now. Nah, we're like still pretty far away from the end.
So in that case, what they did was the superdelegates technically actually vote at the end of the process. And oftentimes, even if they declare earlier, they switch their votes. So, for example, a lot of superdelegates said that they were going to support Hillary in 2008, but in the middle of the campaign, they switched to Obama. And none of that was technical. Only at the end do they vote, do the superdelegates vote. But what the media did instead in 2016 was they showed the superdelegate count in every tabulation right from the get-go. So they'd be like, Hillary Clinton has a 468-0 lead on Bernie Sanders. This thing's almost over. You're like, wait a minute, nobody's even voted, including the superdelegates. You're just saying that those superdelegates declared for Hillary as a way of saying this thing's already over, Hillary Clinton's already won. So they're manipulating the voters into thinking that Bernie Sanders is doing a long shot campaign that is hopeless, and he's just a piece of crap who's trying to hurt the actual Democratic nominee, when these beloved superdelegates have already weighed in, right?
Yeah.
And so it is a fundamental deception, and mainstream media does that all the
True,
time.
trans girl
But
Jade.
it is not rigging the actual votes. And so that's where we drew the line and said, you don't have evidence of any votes being switched from Bernie Sanders to Hillary Clinton.
A large portion of Democrats did believe that the Russians actually went in and flipped votes. Literally.
I never saw anyone saying that on television,
No,
in print.
I'm saying that there were several polls done where they asked voters, do you
Yeah,
believe?
and if the voters were misled by Hillary's over-the-top statements, then that's a shame on Hillary Clinton. But but you can see it is fundamentally different. Because I'll tell you right now, there's people in your audience who are screaming at their screens right now going, no, it was actually stolen. They rigged the votes. Smartmatic and Dominion and the mules. And I saw a Dinesh D'Souza propaganda piece, movie, that convinced me that the votes were actually stolen. No, none of it was stolen. None of it. Never. Zero. And here, I can prove it now ahead of time. So, Tim, you're being reasonable and saying, no, it was not actually stolen in the votes.
I've never said it was stolen in the votes.
Okay, good. Okay, so that is factual.
But they lie. These NGOs run fake stories. You had this one group out of Stanford argue that I'm one of the super spreaders of election misinformation or whatever, when since Joe Biden won, I was like, guys, this is not true. Trump is not going to be reinstated. There are no Dominion weird switching. There's no German servers, but they just pump out lies in the media saying I claimed it anyway.
Yeah. So now the thing that I'll tell the right-wingers that still believe Trump's lie is, all right, guys, you have a perfect opportunity. Because when Trump goes to court in Atlanta and in the federal case on the actual election issues, so not the national documents and not the fraud in New York.
Yeah, no, like the main downside of Tim Pool's show is that you don't have a computer in front of you to immediately fact check him on his bullshit.
But the ones that are actually about January 6th, right? He can win those cases very easily because the core of the cases is they have to prove that Donald Trump not only lied about the election results, but knew that he was lying, okay? So, but the good news is the defense to that is, I wasn't lying, it's true. The election was stolen.
Here's the proof.
Here's the proof.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, if you're a Donald Trump supporter and you really think the election was stolen, if Donald Trump does not present that evidence when it would free him, and it would liberate him and it would prove you right after all these years, then you have to be livid at Donald Trump, right?
Oh, I mean, we've been talking about this for a while too. Like there are a lot of Trump supporters who are like,
the space
they made a
man.
big mistake. Now Trump's going to be able to get the evidence adjudicated because they were dismissed before, but now they have to bring it in court. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see it. If the argument is you're upset with the procedure, like Texas v. Pennsylvania, I agree. We should have that argument over procedure. But this idea that I keep hearing this one where they say they pulled votes out from under the table and started counting, and I was like, and if you watch the full surveillance video, you can watch them put the votes there too.
Yeah,
you can
it's just votes.
You can watch the votes come in, get placed in the box, put under the table. At the end of the day, they then pull them out and start counting them. There is a video of a woman running the votes twice. There's a question of whether or not were the votes rejected from the machine, so she had to run them twice, or was she trying to count votes twice? And if that's the case, how is it possible to run the same vote more than once? They should be serialized or something. But those are things I think are worth having a conversation about.
But so first of all, I'm not getting into any of that nonsense about the votes. But in terms of Texas, Pennsylvania, look, guys, there's challenges that come in any election, and it's very normal. And sometimes the Supreme Court takes the challenge, sometimes they don't. And sometimes they rule in an outrageous way, as they did in Bush v. Gore. By the way, the Supreme Court has ruled in many outrageous ways. They've ruled in Citizens United that corporations are human beings and have even more rights than human beings, that they are endowed by their creator with unalienable rights. What creator? We're their goddamn creators.
Well, corporations are people, my friend.
Yeah, and that corporations have freedom of speech. No, that's called a bribe, okay? That's what it's called. And guys, if you're a right-winger super frustrated with the establishment, you're not wrong. The establishment keeps telling you you're wrong and you're crazy. You're not wrong. But there is a crazy line, right? So in terms of the establishment, they frame everything as if the status quo is great, that corporate rule is awesome, and that you should get nothing, and that the rich and powerful should get everything. And mainstream media is one giant corporate propaganda outlet, okay? And so I can show you all the ways that they've screwed over the left wing. I can show you a lot of ways they screw over the right wing, okay? So if you're frustrated about that and mainstream media figures keep yelling at you, no, you're imagining it, man. These politicians are wonderful, and those aren't bribes. Those are just people talking with one another, and you guys are all radicals. No, that's crap, and that's why nobody believes mainstream media anymore. But when you jump the shark and you come up with conspiracy theories that aren't even remotely true, guys, all you're doing is hurting your cause.
I completely agree. And then you get people who won't vote because they think it's pointless when they need to be voting. But I think here's where
all right. We're gonna end it right there on that bit, because that seemed like it wrapped up things.